What's happening? This is Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat. Welcome to the 13th episode of the Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville. This is the 13th episode, and my guest today is very associated with that number. At least for me, because one of the records that he put out with his band Four Charms was called Triskaidekaphobia. And oh man, I remember how a hard time I had finding that record. I found out about him through a rockabillybase.com interview, and I was like, oh, I have to buy this these records. And I was in Serbia at the time, and I think that he just put out the first album, and it was impossible to get it, literally impossible. And I had a friend from France finding me a record and bringing it back to me in Belgrade, Serbia, and I was stoked. I was like, all right, there's a guy that plays all these cool rhythm and blues stuff, and in his own way, and does all these cool solos, and I was stoked. I was really happy to see him play, and that was pre-YouTube, so I was not able to see any of the Four Charms at that time. So, all right, good morning for everyone. I'm glad that there's a decent amount of people here. Good morning, JM Toll Vedbell, from Milwaukee, and Carolyn from Long Beach. All right, you live close to Slapsville, and Mark from Vancouver. Chuck from Pittsburgh. I would first like to ask you, do you hear me fine? Because I changed my setup again. So please let me know if you need me to be louder or quieter. And I'll ask you the same thing when Jimmy joins me, so that we can level our volumes. That's sometimes an issue. Anyway, I was so happy with that first Four Charms record that I had to get the new one when he put out, and I remember that was a little bit easier. I forgot where I lived at that time, but it was I was stoked. It was the same thing, just maybe a little better. And I remember he was talking about how he recorded that record and how he was deal with the sound, I think in the corner or something. I'll ask him all of that. And if you guys have any questions, please write that down in the comments. And before I introduce my guest, I would like to thank our newest Patreon, SCOT OWEN from the Living End, for becoming a Patreon. And if you'd like to support me in what I do, please check out Patreon link under the video, and other donation links that I have, PayPal, Venmo, and all of that. And without further ado, I would like to introduce for you, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Sutton. What's happening?
Hey, Djordje. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfect. So now we just need somebody to comment if they need me or you to be louder, or we're leveled. All right, we have a few more people. We have Lakshmi from California. Jimmy's his hero, so that's good. Good to have the people like that. Luca from Italy, Russ here in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Mark, all good.
Cool.
Great. So we have a bunch of folks here. So feel free.
Hello, everyone.
Yes. So how have you been? How are you surviving this apocalypse?
Well, I'm still here. Surviving the apocalypse. Okay. It's really, not going on tour has been a real change. But I tell you, there's silver linings in there. I get to bond with my little 2.5-year-old daughter. More, so that's a wonderful thing, but it's extremely challenging, no childcare.
Yeah, it's just being off the road for such a long time, and then without having gigs lined up like for another year or two, and everything is
Yeah.
like, okay, it might go back to normal, but we're doing what we can. If there was no like this COVID-19 situation, I wouldn't start the Slapstream. So there's something good.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this. This is
Yeah,
wonderful.
of course.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted to do this like for a while, and I'm glad we were able to finally do it. All right, I wanted to ask you like how, I mean, this whole show is about slap. I'm trying like to be as much as possible, and about a guest. So I would like to feature you all aspects of your career, because you're a Renaissance man. You're not just a bass player. You're definitely not just a slap bass player. And I would like to start with the questions about slap, and I would like to ask you, how did you get interested in slap? What was the triggering point?
It was more of like an attraction to older music. Back in the when I was a kid in the 70s. Hearing just music in old movies and even cartoons. I remember the Tom and Jerry episode of "Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby," where Tom is playing the bass and singing that song. I mean, that was really moving to me as a kid. And also I grew up on the south side of Chicago, where a classmate of mine was somehow in the Count Basie family, and so they had a connection. So Count Basie played our church 2 years in a row as a fundraiser. And that was a real influence too, because, just I was drawn to the bass player. And also just their power was pretty phenomenal. And I remember being real young and watching an episode of Hee Haw. And I don't know who was slapping on there, and I've never seen this episode again or this footage, but it was somebody slapping the bass, and it was mind blowing. I had never heard anything like it. I mean, I just kind of lost my mind watching it, and so I just kind of stored that seed away. And coming of age in the late 70s, I really got into punk rock, and so like my first rock concert was the Ramones in 1980. It was it was right before my freshman year of high school, and so that was a real big influence. Just and my older brothers, I was the youngest of three boys, and they really kind of helped steer me to listening to a bunch of like cool punk rock and new wave stuff, and kind of fast forward to me hanging out with a buddy of mine named John Krug, who was a drummer in this band named the Throbbers. And we lived right by the University of Chicago. So there was a lot of like international students and people from all over the United States going there. And there was just a lot of cool little like college bands playing. And he was the drummer, even though he was a year younger than me. He was in 7th or 8th grade playing in a kind of a college band. And I remember him going to New York to do a couple gigs with these guys. Who knows? It might have been an apartment party or a loft party in New York City at the time. And I said, "What are you going to do? Are you going to take your drums there?" He says, "No, I think they said I need to play just a snare drum and stand up like the Stray Cats." And none of us ever heard the Stray Cats before. And I thought, cool, a drummer that stands up and plays a snare drum like the Stray Cats. And somehow that kind of like took all my influences when I was younger and put it in this really cool, like I had this great image of this band. And it wasn't, soon afterwards, I was at a record store and I found a 45 of Stray Cats. And I remember it was off the Gun a Ball album. And it just blew my mind. The guy, Lee Rocker had an acoustic bass. He's slapping it. I mean, the whole thing was just opening up a whole new world to me, because it was punk rock holding the hand of old music and rockabilly. And I always loved Elvis too when I was younger too. I always loved seeing footage of Elvis Presley performing. And so I kind of snooped it out. I had to get on the Stray Cats train. And a buddy of mine, we met playing soccer. His name was Paul Creighton. Now he goes by Slink Moss, and we're still friends. We're going to start a band together. So we started our first band, and we were called the Blue Notes. And then eventually we put Rockin' in front of it because somebody said, you know, there's a label called Blue Note, and there's also a band, what's his name? Melvin and the Blue Notes. Anyway, so we put Rockin'. Then we're the Rockin' Blue Notes. And then I had to get an acoustic bass because I was playing electric bass. Got to have acoustic bass. So it was like right when I had turned 16, I went with Paul Creighton and my mother because she was going to front any money I didn't. I needed supplemented because I had a landscaping job at the time. So anyway, we went downtown to this store called Kagan and Gaines. The elevator opens up, and you walk into the store. And long story short, just because I've told this story on the internet before, I walked out of there with I think it was what year was it? I think it's a 1963, maybe a blonde M1K. And the strings were like this far off the fingerboard. And I was pretty naive, so I had no idea that it wasn't supposed to be that way. And so I was trying to learn how to slap. So I wanted to be like Lee Rocker and Bill Black, and it was impossible to slap how I slap now on these strings. So I had this weird technique of plucking the string and then putting my palm against it, and it was pretty. It got me through sometimes, and I remember even being at a Stray Cats show when I was 16 and just staring real hard at Lee Rocker. What is he doing? You know, his hand is moving, and and I was pretty ignorant. I didn't know what I was doing, and so I played for a while in the Blue Notes, and we disbanded maybe after about a year and a half. And that bass, that M1K bass, sat in the basement for the longest time. And I decided to kind of play electric bass after that in some other kind of punk rock bands. And it wasn't till years later that I saw an ad in the Chicago Reader under the classifieds, band looking for acoustic, upright bass player, slap bass player. And it was this band called the Rebel Rousers. So I gave them a call and joined them, I think at 18 or 19 years old. And it was at one of our shows where another band called Hi-Fi and the Roadburners was playing, and the drummer of the band, somehow we got in the conversation. He said, yeah, I know how to slap a bass. And so he was the first one. His name is Randy Dell. Randy Dell is still around. You can check him out on Instagram. But Randy Dell is a great guitar player, great musician all around. Anyway, Randy Dell was the first person that showed me how to play a bass. And it was basically like a country slap, 1 and a 5 kind of groove. Ding, 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 ding. And that just blew my mind again. And finally, I knew how to slap. and so play with the Rebel. Actually, I think yes. Man, you're asking me some tough questions here, because now I'm trying to think of it. After the Rebel Rousers, maybe I joined another punk rock band or something. Oh, I know what it was. No, not at all. I found another ad in that paper, and it was from this guy, Perry LaFine. He was a drummer looking for a band. He wanted to start a rockabilly band. And so we got together and formed the band, the Moondogs. And the Moondogs played a lot of rockabilly and eventually got into rhythm and blues. And that kind of morphed into me starting a band called the Mighty Blue Kings here in Chicago, which is a 7-piece rhythm and blues band. I didn't slap in that band very much at all, but that band became pretty dang successful, especially around Chicago. And And it was after that band that I really started to get back into slap again. And the parting of ways with Mighty Blue Kings kind of broke my heart. So I had just bought a house in Chicago, and I was restoring it, and I would have my basser there always standing up in a corner as I worked on the house, and I would kind of pick it up and face a corner. And I kind of wanted to relearn how I slapped. And so I would slap real slow, almost like Tai Chi, and kind of analyze what I was doing. And I tried to figure out how to relax and use less energy in my slap. And it feels like my whole life has been trying to learn how to relax. You know what I mean? Because when I was young, I told you I was playing with strings as far. Eventually they came down, but still slapping, you just would slap really hard. And my fingers would just, it'd be like raw hamburger, bloody. It was it was really painful.
It's interesting that you're mentioning all of that because, you seem like to be the guy that it might be the most relaxed slap bass player now. Like whenever I see you play, everything is in its, in its own place. And I didn't know you saw like a Count Basie. That's so cool. Was he playing just the piano in a church, or like he had a band?
It was pretty amazing. St. Thomas the Apostle was our church and my grammar school growing up. And it was like this church that was one of the first like old churches that used modern I-beams. So it was kind of like Art Deco meets classic Catholicism, architecture. So it was it's a big church, and they set up on the altar, kind of behind this old fancy railing. And they had a whole grand piano up there and a full orchestra. I mean, nothing was mic'd. And I remember,
so it was a big band, like Atomic Basie stuff.
Yes, and Freddie Green was playing, Father Time playing the rhythm guitar, and Joe Williams. And I realized this after the fact. I looked it up again. I'm like, oh, that was Joe Williams singing. I didn't know who anybody was back then. I was just a kid. Yeah, they played there twice. I remember the second time I was really excited about them coming. So my brother and I were really into flip books at the time. So we had this piece of glass with a light bulb underneath it, and we would make animated flip books out of IBM cards, old used IBM computer cards. Huh. And I remember making one of Count Basie. You see these hands, and then they would pan away, and all of a sudden it's this guy pumping a piano, and it's Count Basie. And he points to this statue, this bust on the piano, and it's a bust of him, and this like little balloon comes out, and it just says, "Hey, that's me." Anyway, I had that at school, and the teacher said, "Wow, this is amazing. You should show Count Basie when he plays." I said, "Yeah, I was hoping to give it to him." So between a couple of the songs, they announced me, and I was pretty young. And I remember walking up there with my big alpaca Peruvian sweater and my collars out. And I walked right up to him, and and he took it, and they presented me, and he flipped it, and then he flipped it again, and he flipped it real slow, and he looked at the last page, and he just started like kind of wheezing kind of laugh. He just reached over and gave me this big giant tree hug. He's like this. He's a big dude sitting there, and
that's so cool. That's that's such a cool story that that you've seen him and Ramones kind of in the same time frame. And it's interesting that you mentioned Gonna Ball from the Stray Cats, because I always saw you as a kind of like on that rhythm and blues side of rockabilly and just straight blues and other stuff that it's associated. But like for me, I would always, if somebody had forced me to say like, oh, like what kind of music Jimmy Sutton plays or likes the most, I would say rhythm and blues. And Gonna Ball is kind of the most rhythm and blues record from the Stray Cats.
Yeah, you're right. It is, isn't it? Yeah. Man, I recently put that record. I haven't heard it in so long. It's really phenomenal. Like, it's amazing to listen to it with different ears, like 25 years later.
Those records are still
probably
good.
longer.
Yeah,
Because I'm a little older now.
it's crazy. How did you mentioned Mighty Blue Kings? How did that whole neo swing craze that was happening at that time, did that affect you as a band? Did it help you out, or you think that could you benefit at all, like from that fashion? Was that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it's I always want. I mean, I got into rockabilly early on through just Elvis Presley, old movies, the Stray Cats, but you know, you would hear rhythm and blues in movies. And when I started hanging out in the scene, in playing with that band, the Rebel Rousers, I was like the young kid. They call me the kid. And these older guys, they were really hip into making mixtapes for me. Kind of, you know, let's influence the kid. And so this is before the internet. This is before, I mean, you know, I had no money to collect records. So
Those were 80s, right?
they what?
80s?
Oh yeah, this was oh gee, well, I mean, yeah, definitely the 80s. When I was with the Rebel Rousers, that was maybe 87, 88, 87, 86, somewhere in there. Late 80s. But these guys would make me these mixed tapes, and a lot of them were really into rhythm and blues too, because there was a band that had started. I mentioned them earlier, Hi-Fi and the Roadburners, and in the early days, all they played was real like straightforward rhythm and blues, jump blues, you know, Jimmy Liggins, a lot of black rock and roll stuff too, you know. And so they were a big influence on me. But then, so these guys who would go to these shows, they're into rockabilly and rhythm and blues, and they'd make me these tapes, and found myself real like gravitating towards the R&B stuff. And I always wanted to start my own rhythm and blues band. And it wasn't until I met this guy Gareth Best, who played guitar, and Ross Bond, who sang and played harmonica, and also their buddy Nick Moss, who was playing guitar too. They came out to our local jam night, which we call the Big Seat Jamboree. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but that went on for about 25 years in Chicago. That was a great place for me to meet a lot of people and rub elbows. These guys were more in the blues scene. So they came out and they really liked what I was doing. I really liked what they did on stage. They played a few songs and asked me to play bass. So afterwards, I talked to him. I said, hey, man, I want to start a rhythm and blues band. And so that was basically the birth of the Mighty Blue Kings. And that was the summer of 94.
Oh, wow. It's kind of like before the neo swing thing, right?
Yeah, completely. And my influences then, like bands that were happening then, were Hi-Fi and the Roadburners, but then also the Royal Crown Review. And the Royal Crown Review had been in Chicago maybe twice at this time. And they were definitely playing more of a swing type thing, swing jazz thing, more than rhythm and blues. But I loved them, and I loved their whole vibe, and they're real cool. And so, so we started this band, the Mighty Blue Kings. We started auditioning people in the summer of '94, and we had our first show, I think, in January of 90, or actually it was December of '94, and before we knew it, it just kind of took off. And we got a regular gig at the Green Mill, and because I knew the owner of the Green Mill, because he owned the other club where I had the Big C Jamboree, and so we started that regular gig, and that just kind of took off. I mean, it was insane. This was before the big nightmare or the nightclub catastrophes, where the whole country kind of came down on occupancy, and so the Green Mill used to get just packed. I mean, it was like people were growing out of the walls, you know what I mean? And for those of you who don't know the Green Mill, I always like to call it the classiest dive in the world. It's been there since 1907. It's in the uptown neighborhood of Chicago, and it is just classic, untouched inside. It's just cool as can be. One of my favorite places to play in the whole world. And
I love that place. Whenever I'm in Chicago, I make sure like to go to Green Mill and see someone playing, and it's usually either Joel or Bo or Alex or some of the guys.
The Fat Babies still play there. They play there every Tuesday night, And Joel Patterson has the late night jam. Starts at I think maybe 11 a.m.
On Sunday, right?
on Sundays, and it's behind. They have two stages. So this stage is like right behind the bar. It's like this
Yes.
little circle.
I love it.
And he plays with the organ extraordinaire. What's his name? You remember his name?
I forgot his name, but I've seen him many times.
I know his name. I'm just having a brain freeze. Anyway, check it out. Sunday nights, Green Mill.
And Alex plays drums.
Right. Well, yeah. A lot of the nights he does, majority. So anyway, we played. The Mighty Blue Kings used to play a regular gig there for about 2 years, and that was just an insane scene. And we were getting courted by American Records at first, and then MCA, but that band kind of went some ways where I found myself not in the band anymore, and I started a band with Joel Patterson. I actually met Joel Patterson. He was living he grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, and I met him actually on a Mighty Blue Kings gig up in Milwaukee, and we became friends and just really hit it off. And so after the Mighty Blue Kings, I just started playing some gigs with him up in Wisconsin, and I convinced him to come down to Chicago. And he was my tenant for many years.
What year was that?
What year was that?
Yeah, what year was that?
That would be maybe it was 98.
Oh, okay. I see you started Four Charms around that time. Okay.
Yeah, I left Mighty Blue Kings in 97, and I immediately was playing with Joel, but then we started the Four Charms / Jimmy Sutton Four Charms. It has two names, but that was in the summer of maybe 98, and we started messing around with that, and we put out our first album in 2000, the Flatland Boogie album.
Oh, I love that.
But going back to the Mighty Blue Kings, some of the big influences in that band, a band that I always loved was the Trainers. And I remember really loving one of the first songs I transcribed by them was this. It's not on any album. I mean, they actually do have an album version of it, but it was off of, I think it was Don't Knock the Rock. They were playing a song called Rockin' on Sunday Night. And it's just, the guy's playing a P bass, but it's the coolest sound. And it's just the way he walks and all the passing notes and substitutions. It blew my mind. And so we covered that song in the Mighty Blue Kings. And that opened a lot of doors for me on just how to approach walking the bass and on a blues type tune.
It's interesting, like how like that walking bass approach is different, like for jazz guys or blues guys. There's definitely a difference, and that's cool. What I wanted to ask you, like, I would love to hear you play something. Do you have something? Do you have your bass close to you?
I can play that. I can play that song. Rocking on Sunday Night. The Trainers. Let's see.
All right, awesome.
Let's see if I can keep these headphones on. The cord isn't that
okay.
low.
I'll let you get ready.
All righty.
All right, people. So we have Jimmy Sutton here. He's getting ready to do his song. And if you have any suggestions or if you have any questions for Jimmy or me, please write it down in a live chat. And if you have any comments like for the sound, please do that as well. And I believe that Jimmy is ready now, so I'll solo him right now. And all right, let's rock and roll.
All right, B flat. There was. And that bass line really influenced me tons. And so when I started playing with the Four Charms, Joel taught me a lot because he knew a lot about jazz, and he kind of hit me to substitution and passing notes. And so, but you know, I kind of got into slap and things like that. So we play a. Fun to slap lines like that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Since you have your bass in your hand, a question about the roll slap that you're doing. Are you doing it like with a palm or like with your thumb, or like how do you do it?
That's a good question. Let's see. How do I do it? It's yeah, I'm hitting here first with my thumb. And I do notice, like, depending on what I'm playing, I'll sometimes slap like this. Let's see. I'll bring this down a little bit so you can see. With the side of my hand, or I'll start with the thumb. I think that's the two different ways I do it. But so the roll is.
And do you remember like when how did you find out about that pattern? Have you ever heard somebody doing it, or?
Yeah, Kevin Smith. That was the first time I heard. Yeah, I heard him do that. You know, and it was really seeing him live. That's really what influenced me the most. The Moondogs had opened up for High Noon. That's when High Noon was backing up Ronnie Dawson.
Oh, cool.
These were the days when, man, you know, these shows, these kind of caravan shows, I mean, they would be so packed, you know, I mean, of course, kind of before the internet, and it was exciting times. So when the first time I saw Kevin, I was, you know, blown away. But it was that role, you know.
Exactly. It seems that, you know, he's the guy that, you know, influenced the most as far as that particular pattern goes. You know, Jason Burns from the King Double Bass and Blaskout, he was talking about it when he was a kid. And it's like, oh, like, how is he doing that? Or, you know, I don't know, everyone. I remember hearing Stranger Things for the first time, and when I was in Serbia back home, and then, you know, I was trying to figure out the lick by myself. It's cool, but you're doing it in your own way, so that's the reason why I wanted to ask you, because you have a different position of your hand. Kevin is more like this, and you're more like this. Yep. And I hear a little difference in the sound as well, so that's why I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, all right, yeah, yeah, it is definitely a kind of a roll of the hand.
It's the same thing. It just sounds a little bit different. So I wanted, you know, I thought that maybe people might be interested in that. You have a question. Could you play your version of Stuttering Cindy?
I need the band. Boy, I don't know if I can play my version of Stuttering Cindy, because then I would have to sing it, and I don't remember the words. I might stutter my way through it. I don't know if I can. That's really putting me on the spot. I would love to. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can revisit that.
Okay. Another time.
Who asked me that?
Jack Edgington.
Jack, thanks for asking me to play that. And I wish I could. I feel like I might. I don't even know how to even start that song. I think I can play more on guitar by myself than bass.
Well, yeah,
I don't have a guitar around.
Yeah. And you have like one more comment, JM said, like, I remember having the same conversation about the Trainiers with you at the Globe in Milwaukee around 2000.
Oh, wow. That's fun.
So
2000, the Globe, Milwaukee. Yeah.
you've been promoting Trainiers for decades now.
Yeah, they were one of my favorite rhythm and blues bands, and they're also incredible performers.
I never seen them.
They were a family from Alabama, and
Okay.
they had two brothers that would front the band that were the main singers, Cliff and Claude Trainier, and they're identical twins. And they would do all these shticks on stage. They even do one where they would go to a new town, and one guy would come out and he'd start singing, and he would walk off the stage, and but then the other twin would come on the stage the other way. So, they're like, how did he run around so fast? You know what I mean? They didn't know that it was two twins. But they were pretty awesome. And they were also a Milt Trainier, and the Trainiers were a real influence on the Mighty Blue Kings, just because I had presented Ross Bond, the singer of the Mighty Blue Kings, so many Trainier songs. So we played a lot of Trainier songs. And when the Trainiers were in town, they would come out to see us perform. And a lot of times we would go to Milt Trainier's club to see the Trainiers perform there. Milt Trainier was one of the brothers, and he had a nightclub in the basement. It was called Milt Trainier's, and it was downtown Chicago. And so it was pretty exciting times just to kind of to get inspired and influenced by the Trainiers as we started the Mighty Blue Kings. So, and
Those are good times.
They really rooted us on.
Oh, I bet. If you want, you can leave your bass and sit down. It seems that you're a little uncomfortable with a bass, like standing like that. If you want, like, just sit down.
Oh, thanks. No big deal. Thinking about thinking about the Trainiers and the whole Mighty Blue King time. You had said you had mentioned, that was kind of before the swing thing, and it was. We had no idea the whole swing movement was going to blow up, and so it was like by '96 we got kind of just swept up by the whole swing movement, and that's when a lot of major labels were courting us, and we did a record release party around the corner from the Green Mill at the Aragon Ballroom. We did it ourselves.
I played there. I know that place.
Yeah.
I played there with Tiger Army.
It's a great venue, an old ballroom. It looks like a Spanish courtyard inside. They have the indigo blue sky where they project the clouds moving. It's an old dance hall. That's all original, still exists there. But we put on our record release for the album Meet Me in Uptown with the Mighty Blue Kings there, and we're hoping, we did it all ourselves with some help of the owner from the Green Mill. We were hoping for 1,200 people to break even, because it was expensive to rent the place and have paramedics and security. And we had a lot of friends volunteer. And I think we ended up about 3,500 people showed up, somewhere around there. And we just sold like so much merchandise, and we bought a van and a trailer and just started touring after that. I mean, it really was an incredible time.
Wow, good times. So you were, after that success, you were with the band just for another year or two, right?
Yeah, I left the summer of '97.
That whole neo swing thing was so influential. I mean, even I in Serbia had I started my own band, Havana Whisper, that we played neo swing stuff. Cool. And it was a good band, like full on with the horns and everything. And I just started into like jazz arrangements, and then I was finishing the school for jazz arranging, so I was really into it. Really helped me out, like kind of like, all right, I'm a rock and roll guy, but I like all these lines, so jazz lines, so it's combined, so it's perfect. You have a couple of questions from Ben. I see Jimmy using Underwood pickups and full circle pickups. Which do you prefer out of these two?
Well, I preferred my The very first Underwood pickup I bought might have been in 1990, and that one was great, and it lasted me a real long time. But then eventually it just kind of fizzled out, and I could never. I was never happy with the Underwood pickup again. I'm sorry to say that. Maybe they've improved since then, but I tried other pickups. You know, the piezo pickups that kind of fit in the what do you call it, the arm and the knee of the bridge. But touring, we always just kind of had problems. They're very finicky. I would get feedback at times, and so I like the idea of the full circle, because the Fishman full circle, because it was it's part of the adjuster, and so it's machine made, and so it leaves less room for human error, you know, carving out the little nook where the pickup goes. So if the bass got bumped on the road or you know, traveling, things always happen to the bass. In this case, it wouldn't happen with the Fishman full circle. So it was an adjustment sound wise, but right now I'm pretty happy. And we do travel with a sound guy. So it helps to have a consistent sound guy, because we've really kind of worked on this sound that I have these days when I'm out on tour with the JD McPherson band.
I mean, the sound guy is equally as important as the member of the band. That's what people, you know, hear from the stage.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I always kind of feel that sounding good is 75% of the, you know, the whole equation of just like making, you know, making a mark on people, like really sounding good. I mean, you can play one note. If one note sounds great, you know, you can tell a good story that way. If it's, absolutely, you know, when I was younger, I didn't know what I was doing. You know, along with the strings being this far off the fingerboard, I had no idea how to amplify the bass. I remember at Kagan Gings, they sold me a Marcus Berry transducer, you know, and it might have been for a cello or something, but that did not do the trick, man. And so I was playing
like this type of looking pickup kind of thing.
No, it was like a bar, like a smaller bar with a wire coming out of it, and you had some little like
in between legs of the bridge.
They didn't tell you where to put it.
Oh, okay. I think it's the one between the legs of the bridge. I've seen that, but I haven't seen.
Oh,
that.
No. I know what you're talking about. I wouldn't know the name of that pickup. I've always been interested in those, but no, this was just a small piece of metal with, like, you know, two you know, little, they kind of like gave you this little like, it's like not gum but sticky stuff.
Putty?
Yeah. Like a putty, yes, that you would stick the transducer on the bass, and they didn't really tell you where to put it. Or eventually I used it under the neck, you know what I mean,
for slap.
To get the slap, yeah.
Okay, I remember.
And that's when I was real young, yes. And I had I did the Lee Rocker thing, where you put the P-bass pickups at the end of the fingerboard.
Oh, cool! How did that work?
Actually, you know what? It wasn't the P-bass pickups. I actually found at Kagan & Gings, it was this chrome. It was the same thing, but it was a chrome piece that you kind of screwed into the end of the fingerboard.
Was it Schaller?
I can't remember the name. Boy, I have to dig it out. I'll have to dig it out, and maybe I can put it into the comments later on. But you know, I've kept a lot of my old pickups and stuff, but they're deep in storage. I wish I would have remembered to try to look for that and show it.
Yeah, I think it was there was Schaller was definitely making those, like a German brand. They can like basically like a P-bass pickup with a chrome.
Yeah, that might have been it. Yeah,
I
that might
never
have
had
been
that, but I've seen that.
it. Yeah.
So were you playing steel strings back then?
I was playing steel strings back then,
Okay.
and I tell you, actually, it looks something like this. You know, here I'll draw it for you. Here's the fingerboard, and it was this chrome pickup that would go to the would attach to the end of the fingerboard. You see that?
Yes. That's the exact thing that I'm thinking about.
And that thing saved my life. Then I was able to play with the rock and blue notes.
That's great. I think that okay. So
Yeah, and I did play metal strings. I can't even tell you what strings they were back then. But a big game changer for me was learning about gut strings. And it was
was it this pickup, Jimmy?
that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wonder if mine had. Yeah, maybe it did have a volume. I think it did have a volume on it. Yeah, that is it.
All right.
That's hysterical. Wow, good find.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember. I remember. I never had it, but I remember that one, seeing that one.
And but then I got hip to gut strings. It was through my old German luthier. His name was Pinter. He had a Pinter's violin shop. It was about a block and a half north of Wrigley Field on Clark Street in Chicago, where the Cubs played. And there was this old German guy, and he says, "Have you ever tried these gut strings?" You know, and that was kind of a game changer. And the first time I think I heard gut strings, somebody else playing was Jimbo Wallace.
Oh, okay.
With Reverend Horton Heat. This is kind of before Reverend Horton Heat took off. They played Chicago a couple times at this old club named Lounge Axe. And
so that was in the 90s, like early 90s, or?
Oh yeah, maybe 1990.
Oh, so you already with all these bands like Mighty Blue Kings, you already played gut strings.
Yeah.
Okay,
for sure. So yeah, I kind of learned about gut strings when I was young, but Jimbo Wallace was a big influence because he was playing gut. I think he plays metal now, but I just love that sound. I wanted to sound like the the old records I heard. And I think I might have already been playing the Underwood at the time. You know, this old Pinter, the old German luthier. He would kind of say, "Yeah," he would always, hit me to certain things, gear. And so, but so when I had the Underwood along with the gut strings, that I was starting to dial in a sound, but unfortunately I still didn't have a good sounding amp. I used to play one of these big PV cabinets with two 15-inch speakers and the PV head, and it just did not sound good.
For some reason, the 15s, I never had good sound with 15s. There's something wrong about it, or maybe it's something wrong about me. I was never able to make a good sound out of it.
And so another game changer. I got tired of that amp, and so I remember there was a Guitar Center not too far away from me, and I actually took my acoustic bass there, and I tried out every single amp, every single speaker and amp combination that I could, that I could try, that I can, put together. And I walked out of that place that night with a GK 400 RB and a Hartkey.
I remember those.
Yeah, and a Hartkey aluminum cone 410 speakers cabinet. Because I really like the directness. You know what I mean?
I like 10s as well. I use 8s, 10s when I play now.
Yeah, it seems to be more focused of a sound, and a lot of times, I mean, I don't use it for club sound. It's just for me. You know what I mean? And I like it because it cuts through, and And a lot of times I won't make it real bassy or a lot of bottom end. I want it, that can happen out, in the audience through the main PA. But a lot of times I just want to be able to hear the note before I hear the boom.
That makes sense. Is that what you're playing now as well, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm endorsed by GK, Galen Kruger, and I will play the 400, but also I play the 800 a lot. And then sometimes on the road, if I travel, I'll play their little mini amps. Is it the 550? I can't remember the model numbers, but they have a cool little solid state amp that's fun to travel with. And
I never had GK, so I'm not familiar with those. I mean, I played them, but I never had one on my own. Let's go back to bass. Like, what would you say? What back in those days? I mean, and now still, like, who would you consider some of your biggest bass and more specifically slap bass influences?
Probably there's mainly two. Willie Dixon would be my main influence. All his recordings and playing with the Big Three Trio, it's always mind-blowing to me. And I just think it's really tasteful and super cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he just, I mean, he's, people in the slap world kind of are hip to him, but a lot of people, they know him for kind of being a producer and a writer of blues songs. They kind of really don't know how great of a player he was, and also a slap bass player.
Amazing.
I mean, later on, he's playing blues. You hear more about his lack of intonation than like his amazing playing, on these early recordings.
It's really cool. I mean, first time when I discovered Big Three Trio, and it was actually thanks to Kevin, because I'm not sure if you remember, you probably do, that red swing book that came out in the mid 90s or late 90s. It was like a big red cover, and
oh yeah.
So that's how I found out about lots of things that were happening in the States at that time on that scene. And Kevin was talking about Willie Dixon, and he listed like a few records, and I remember that I bought every single one, and that was a pain in the butt, like, finding those records. But I did find them, and I bought them, and I was like, I loved Big Three Trio, and I still do. I mean, it's just such,
yeah, me
really
too.
Great records. It's amazing.
In Willie Dixon, how he does a lot of single pull,
yes.
Not a slapback. It's just a dunk dunk dunk, not a dunk a dunk a dunk.
Yeah.
That was a real big influence. And then Bill Black, I love just the simplicity, and he plays just the right things. Maybe he just maybe because he didn't know how, but I love, like, even when you hear a lot of early Sun Elvis recordings, and it's him not playing dung 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 dung. I mean, he might, but sometimes it's just dung 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 dung, and just slapping on one note, a country beat. I just thought it was just so appropriate, and it just made the tune real cool. So that was kind of a big influence, just thinking in that way. How can I simplify this instead of actually adding more and trying to play a lot of notes? Was how to play, what can I not play? Less is more kind of attitude. And then probably, another influence would be just being real rhythmic. But it's a certain type of rhythm, but it's like Bill Haley. I know that Marshall Lytle, and what's the other bass player?
Rex.
Yes, just that style, that consistency of the slapback, that ding 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 ding, and where the drummer actually kind of hung back and just added all this great accents and flavor, where the slap bass was the driving force. That's pretty phenomenal music. And so that was an influence too.
Those records were amazing. And I'm glad you mentioned Al Rex, because not many people are aware of them. Like whenever they talk about Bill Haley's bass players, they always talk about Marshall Lytle, who's great. But for me, if you're listening to Al Rex, he sounds at least as good as Marshall. And I had the chance to talk to both Al Rex and Marshall, with Al Rex over the phone. I tried to convince him to for an interview for the Art of Slap Bass, but he was not into it. It's like, but you know, I talked to him, and I talked to lots of musicians that he played with, and then they played with both of them, and they prefer to play with Al. They say he had a better intonation, better groove, better this. So I think that Al was kind of the most responsible for the sound on those records. But Marshall came in the right time, so he recorded, you know, Rock Around the Clock and all of the biggest hits. So
right,
it's one of those things.
So you know, big influence. You know, and then talking about big songs, listen to Willie Dixon playing on Chuck Berry, and you know, it's there.
It's there.
It's there, and it's perfect. You know what I mean? Just that chemistry, that combination with what's the piano player, Johnson, and Willie Dixon and Chuck Berry. I mean, it's just phenomenal, because just because Willie Dixon was the perfect basis for those tunes.
Absolutely, and he kind of plays a little bit different than he played on the other stuff when he plays with Chuck Berry, and he definitely played like different than other rock and roll bass players at the time. So it's really cool. I love those.
Yeah, he's mixing it up. I mean, I love it that Chuck Berry is kind of playing kind of straight with a swing to it, but it's kind of straight. And drummers at that time, I mean, it's my belief that, you know, the whole like straightforward kind of surf rock beat wasn't a real kind of norm. So the drummer's swinging it. And then you have Willie Dixon, and he's kind of mixing it up. He's playing 4 on the floor, and he's also playing 2/4 kind of rhythms. And it was just the right combination, where it left a lot of really cool space for things to breathe and for things to groove. And there was a lot of great peaks and valleys in what they were doing. Really infectious.
Yeah, I love the Willie Dixon's playing when he played with Chuck Berry. I love it on the songs "You Can't Catch Me" and "Little Community."
Oh, absolutely.
Those were awesome. And he played even some solos. I think that there's like few solos in the song that he recorded with Chuck Berry, "Long Fast Jam" or something like that. It was released on Bear Family box set.
Oh, man.
Those were cool. And like slap bass solos by Willie Dixon, but different than his regular Big Three trio stuff or Memphis Slap stuff. It's really amazing. I love that.
Absolutely.
It's so all of you that are watching, write down all these little things so you can find these recordings. Now It's easy. We're giving you everything on the plate.
Yeah, back when I was learning how to slap, there was no. I mean, it was just so hard to find any information. It was just like I told you the story of me trying to learn how to slap. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
You couldn't watch a YouTube video. You couldn't. You know, there was nothing.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I remember I was in Serbia. There was like a couple of guys that kind of did it, but it's you know, it was really hard to find any information. Well, back now when I'm thinking, you know, you could have bought Milt Hinton's instructional video that was released in 1993.
Yeah, I guess so. If I would have known about it at the time.
That's a cool one. And now it's on YouTube. So
yeah.
Let's grab bass again. Like you have like a couple of questions, you know, that people ask you about.
Sure.
Can you please talk more about walking bass lines in different genres like blues, jazz, and maybe honky tonk? So I think that would be the best
Oh, geez.
with the bass. That's
Man,
from Luca, I believe, from Italy.
I don't know if I'm the authority on any of this, but
Since he's asking you, he's asking about Jimmy Sutton approach. So you are the absolute authority in that approach.
let's see. Let's make sure I'm in tune. All right. So can you ask the question again, please? What?
Can you please talk more about walking bass lines in different genres, blues, jazz, and maybe honky tonk?
Sure. I mean, like I showed you that one bass line for the Trenair song "Rockin' on Sunday Night," and I definitely use that. I kind of use that the influences or even the idea of passing notes on a lot of other rhythm and blues songs that I played with the Mighty Blue Kings and the Four Charms at the time. So let's see. I'll play in C right now, and so if I was playing a kind of a swing number that was more jazz in C, a lot of times, I would maybe not do fast movements. I might play something like this.
Before you start, can I just ask you to lift your camera a tiny bit so people can see your left hand a little bit?
How's that?
Yes, that'll be perfect. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for the
I have to be a producer here as well.
You're a good producer. Thank you, buddy. So instead of playing something like that, I would actually begin like. You know what I mean? Where it was, and then if there's something like a Chicago blues tune that was a little bit later, you might want to play real boneheaded, real dumb, or a rock and roll tune. It's almost like I'm always challenged by this, but it's always trying to find the right thing for the song. And then when it comes to say like a honky tonk song, less is more, Does that answer the question, or what else? What else am I missing? I want to answer Luca's question.
I think it answers that. So talk more about walking bass lines in different genres, blues, jazz, and honky tonk.
Blues, jazz, and honky tonk. Oh, here, let's play some rhythm changes.
Sure.
This is one thing. Here, I'll put it like this. When I started playing with the Mighty Blue Kings, we kind of touched on this, but it was really when I started playing with Joel Patterson, we played a lot of rhythm changes. And in that band, by the way, was me on bass, Joel Patterson on guitar, a fellow named Jim Barclay on drums, and also the phenomenal saxophone player Jonathan Doyle on tenor sax, and sometimes he would play baritone sax too. And in when we would play, a lot of times Joel and Jonathan would play lines, these licks in unison, very much like what's it, Bill Jennings? I don't know if you're hip to Bill Jennings. What's the other guy? I can't remember the influence, but anyway. But we did a lot of songs like "Flying Home," and so I was kind of forced to learn rhythm changes, and he helped me a lot with that. And so here I'm going to do something in B flat, and I'm going to slap it too, because I used to like mixing it up playing pizzicato and slapping. But here's a little slap thing. So
I love it. That's awesome. So since you have your bass with you, actually there were like, oh, I think one more. Let me check. One more question. Oh yeah. What comes in your mind when you're building a solo, rhythmically and chordally?
I don't know. It's probably more based on fear.
Well, I love your solos with four charms. Those are really
thanks.
cool.
Yeah, a lot of times, I mean, it was almost kind of like, I was thinking about this actually earlier today, just because I thought maybe I might be asked this question, but, you know, slapping, obviously, it's a percussion. It becomes a percussive instrument. And, you know, and sometimes when I think about drum solos, I love a drummer who could just play a really good tight roll and just play real simple solos. You know what I mean? Just because to the listener, it's just a beautiful sound. It's a beautiful thing. And so it's almost like, let's cleanse the palate. So I remember I found myself a lot of times with the four charms, trying to like kind of to create a platform, a place where I can start the solo. A lot of times I would, you know, play up. You know, things like that. But it was starting off real simple.
That's
And
a cool approach because it gives you space to grow and build the solo. If you just start with some craziness, where are you gonna go from there?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I sometimes struggle with Tiger Army, because you know when the band stops, I have to like be full on. You know, I can't have like, you know, like that little bit of more of a jazzy approach, like when you have, if it's a big space. I feel that approach kind of fits better on records or like clubs, like especially like jazz.
Yeah, well, that was something I really learned playing like every Tuesday night at the Green Mill with the four charms.
That's perfect for that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because, I mean, you had to try different things. And so I can get down and, you know,
Awesome. And I'm glad you played that, because there was a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you and I forgot about it earlier. You are using slap in a thumb position as well, right?
In a thumb position?
What you just played, like, you know, with a thumb pressing.
Yeah. Sorry, man. My terminology is just not happening. I see what you mean. Like down here?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah, not many people do that. And then I remember that when I heard that you were doing that on a Four Charms Records, I was like, yeah, this is cool. I think it's on the first one. I forgot now, but
yeah, Flatland Boogie.
I really appreciated that part. Like when I heard that, it's like, oh, okay. And another technical question that I wanted to ask you is, like, I noticed that you're using your third finger a lot when you play. Do you use your third finger on a
left
finger or
my left hand?
Yes, left hand. Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Actually, so I think I took 2 or 3 lessons. I've only had 2 or 3 lessons in my life, and I'm not saying that in a proud way. Actually, I wish I took more bass lessons. I just happen to be it's just I'm not very disciplined. But I did learn a lot from those lessons, and these are formal lessons. And I wanted to learn more left-hand technique, and that's kind of like what I got out of it. And that is a more of an orthodox approach to bass playing. It really helped my intonation a lot. If I find myself playing in a real kind of orthodox, I think they call it a claw position, you know, and then the different hand positions on the fingerboard, you'll see me doing it where it's very kind of orthodox, and then I'll just kind of put my elbow down and I'll start playing completely. I wouldn't say it's wrong. It's not the right word, but you know, just kind of how I originally learned how to play. So I kind of flip back and forth. I'm not a real trained player, but that actually was a big game changer for me. And so if you could take lessons, do it. I highly recommend lessons. But you know, it was using. And then this third finger is used to back this up. But then, so when I do flip off of that, and I think that's what you're talking about, is wow, it's weird. I can't actually play with the third finger. Thinking about it, but yeah, you're right. I do it because this finger's fat compared to this finger. It's because of how much I played with this finger when I was younger, and even now too. But when I was, you know, in my teens and early 20s, I played a lot with the third finger, just not knowing how to play properly.
I noticed that you're kind of like combining both of those, and I was. This is interesting. Sometimes he's using, you know, classical position, and then sometimes he goes like to with the third finger in the place that I would not expect you to do that.
Oh man, welcome to my world. Yeah.
Well, I love being in your world, but we are talking about lessons. I think that I'm ready to learn something. So, okay. You know, one of the licks, if you don't mind showing me that one, that I always love, it's from that first album. From a first JD's album. Was it called Country Boy or something? It's like
yes, Country Boy.
Okay. Can you show me that one?
Yeah, that was one of the covers on the album, the non-originals, but it's an old rhythm blues song.
But you made it your own, so.
Oh yeah, we definitely took artistic license with it. So that one.
Before, let me grab my bass. So I need a second. And I would recommend all of you grab your basses too, because now it's the time to learn from Jimmy Sutton.
Yeah, let's all grab our basses. That's
you
great.
Don't have a chance to do that often. All right, I hope they'll be able to hear me like this. Okay, I think. Okay, and before I have a question for the audience. Tell me if you need to hear my bass louder or quieter, because I didn't have a chance to do a sound check for this. Do you hear me fine, Jimmy?
Sounds great.
Okay, so hopefully someone else will say something as well. All right, I'm ready. Which key are we in?
All right, we're in F. And the song starts. It's weird. When it goes to the 5, I tend to play a 2. I kind of did this kind of boneheaded approach on it, but so I begin the song on the 2, which is the G. So.
Oh, so it starts on G. Okay. And so you're doing.
I'm going G. What is that? B flat.
B flat.
D.
And you're doing D on A string.
Yes.
Okay. And can you just, all right, so let me do the notes. So the notes are, right? Okay.
Oh, and then I play the G before I go down to the F. And on the
Okay.
F,
But the song is in F, right?
Yeah, and on the F, it's the same pattern as I just played on the G.
Let me just do the G pattern again. And that roll slap that you're doing, it's in between C. It's in between D and G, right?
That is correct. Between the D going into the G.
All right, so I'll try to do it a little bit, Jimmy Sutton style.
That looks good.
I know. So it's just one. Right?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, cool. Okay, so there's a little. Okay, there's a little triple slap, but those are 8 notes because we're basically in a rumba groove, right?
Yeah.
I at least like to talk. So that one is, and then. Okay, so let me try it in F. That's the triple at the end, right?
Yeah. So exactly. So. I ain't nothing but a ain't nothing but a
All right, let me try to do the intro first. So the song is in F, but it starts on 5, but Jimmy Sutton plays on 2. That's the intro, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, and then the song goes. It's, if I remember correctly, it's four bars of F, 2 bars of G, and 2 bars of F. That's structure, kind of, right?
Yeah, loosely. Yeah.
Okay, let me try.
Ain't nothing but a country. Yeah. Then it starts over for another verse.
Okay, and show me that that lick that you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, the walk down after the breaks, it's a high F, and then you're going down a full step to what is that? E flat. So, and then C, a whole step to B flat, and then I play an A flat on the D string, then a G on the D string to F on the D string, C, F.
Okay,
So-
so let me try.
All right.
Okay, I'll try first without these rolls, just to make sure that I got the notes right.
That sounds right.
Okay, and the rolls are between A flat and last F.
Yeah, the roll is going into the right before going into the A flat,
Okay.
then the C. Or actually, no. I'm sorry. That's it. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. Let me try.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Okay, let me try to do the whole thing once. All right, so guys, you can play it with me, but if I screw up, you should play it right. So I'll start on 2. All right, I'll do then just walk down after that, since we have only stops, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then right?
That's it.
Awesome. Thank you. I love learning. So I love having lessons, you know, I really do. You know, I had lessons for 14 years in between my classical music school and my jazz music school, at least twice a day. So you know, I kind of missed that, you know, like just constant learning from someone. A question that we kind of talked a little bit is about the terminology. What are the slap-based patterns that you are using, and how do you call them? Are you using that, like you said something like single pool once when we were talking earlier?
Yeah, like when I first started learning how to play, you know, it was you know, I did the kind of the classic you know, kind of slap. So I would call that, you know, just kind of a classic walking slap. So it's, but then when I learned about just doing single pulls, I really love that because it really worked well with rhythm and blues, a lot of jazz stuff, but it also helped me to simplify things so that when I did even do a slap, it sounded cool. So if you did something like you know what I mean? So it's
and then you mentioned country slap.
yeah. So that's country slap for me. And then, you know, there's the roll, which is basically a fast country slap if you kind of turn it around. So if it's those things kind of hold each other's hands, don't they?
Yes, it's funny. Like I always explain it if I'm teaching a master class. I always teach it that way. I always tell the students, you know, you should try to practice that. I usually call it gallop triple slap, but country slap works as well. So if it's just do that and then speed it up and then you keep the tempo of the slaps, but then you use it as an ornament, because like that roll, it's always in its own tempo. It's more of an ornament than, you can't just write it down as far as rhythmical notes. I mean, you can, but it's different every time. So I always write down as an ornament.
Yeah, or even I always kind of like to think about it as a drum roll.
Yes, yeah,
You know
I like calling it roll.
You know,
that's what I
roll. You know, and that's almost like what Willie Dixon did. You know, with the top-notch boogie, little roll he does, which is a completely different thing. You know that. It's like
yeah, he's using. That's actually my favorite Willie Dixon song. Glad you mentioned. I believe that he's playing like this. Right?
Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah, that part, you got that down. How that?
Yeah,
that's hard.
Yeah, I think it's just like single slaps. Yeah, that's how I play. I never saw him playing, but I think that's it.
He has to be playing it like that. I don't know how else he would play it. But you know, and this is something I'm always working on. But if you kind of break it down, it's, you know what I mean? It's ding 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 ding. You know what I mean?
His groove was impeccable. I mean, amazing. So any other patterns that slap patterns that you're using?
Yeah, you know, another thing that I always kind of like to do. I don't know if you're familiar with the song "Signs and Signifiers" on the album.
I am.
That one. It's a real simple song, but I really enjoyed kind of doing this double time slap thing. I think it's about one verse in, but or one verse and a chorus in. But the song is in G and it goes. You know, and only the bass changes, the rhythm all stays the same. And so that was a pretty fun thing. And that has to do with that pattern.
It's amazing how much you can do just like with one note and just changing a little bit of a slap bass patterns and just creating different grooves that way. And you're a master for that.
Thanks. You know where I actually learned that slap, the idea. I mean, I took it, you know, and made it my own. But actually, I learned that from Bobby Trimble, the drummer from Big
really? Oh, okay.
But he had learned it from Russell Scott, Russell Scott and the Red Hots in L.A. You know, I think he showed me some lick that did it was something like this.
I like calling that like a double rumba because it kind of doubles instead of 3-3-2. It's like 3-3-3-3-2-2. almost dropped my water.
And that's a good name for it.
And any other? I mean, you haven't mentioned, but I know that you're using triplets. Just like a
yeah. And a lot of times, what I like to do is do triplets. Like, see if I'm playing something like. Or actually, like here I'm doing a roll, like a gallop. And kind of doing a triplet after a gallop. That's always kind of fun for me. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I totally understand what you're talking about. And anything else that you would like to mention as far as terminology goes?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, so if I got actually, I need the bass for that. If I got it right, you're using your single pull would be like this, right?
Yeah.
And then walking slap, that's the one when you have the something that I would call double slap, where you have actually that back slap, right?
Yeah.
You would call that walking slap, and I wrote down like so they don't forget. So, and then country slap would be something that I would call gallop. It's interesting because that same pattern exists also in Romania. Lots of like Romani bass players in Romania play that same groove, but it's more straight and usually sounds like this. And I always found out like, wow, it's kind of the same thing, but it's a little bit different, a little more straight, kind of bit shuffly. It's not completely straight, but it's the same kind of hand movement.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if I mean you've played with Deke, so if you're playing a one of
the Skinner blues.
Well, yeah, just a real like straight on, harder kind of a rock and roll tune. That's more of a straight ahead surf beat.
Yeah,
you're going to straighten it out too.
Absolutely.
As opposed to.
Those tiny differences in groove like make the songs, make the magic happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And depending on who the drummer is, a lot of times you think about it that way and you lock in with their right hand. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then sometimes you want to maybe not lock in, and it actually creates another vibe. That's kind of like a Willie Dixon meets a swing a drummer beat. You know what I mean? Or Chuck Berry playing straight. You know what I mean? There's no real rule.
No, that's the beauty of it. And besides that, you're playing roll slaps and rumbas and double rumba.
Yeah,
that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, the double rumba. See, now you've taught me that. Now you've put a label on what I do, because I didn't know what I was doing before. Now I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's that I had to name somehow when I was explaining like to people. And usually would be, again, like from Romani music, that pattern that. So, which is basically that 3-3-3-3-2-2. So, just doubling up, and cool. All right, so I can leave my bass. Oh, you can leave your bass now too.
All right,
so let's talk more. If you guys have any questions, now is the time. We have Jimmy here, so you can ask me questions anytime, every Saturday. but you don't have an option to this exclusivity to ask Jimmy, so use it. Chris Robinson wrote, Jimmy was the first dude who showed me how to slap a few years ago when they rolled through Austin, Texas.
Oh, I'm glad I showed him how to slap.
Well,
I remember the first guy I asked how to slap. He hung up the phone on me.
oh, that happens, especially if it's,
that was back in the 80s.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So I mean, this reminded me, you know, that since you showed like Chris how to do slap, do you ever do like any master classes or private lessons or stuff like that? Do you like teaching at all?
I do. A lot of times, I mean, it's really just about you know, a right hand technique. I thought about maybe doing it again, but maybe a little bit more, maybe online, informal, you know, where, you know, it's not like a structured class. But yeah, I've been thinking about maybe doing that.
Were you ever thinking about doing instructional DVDs or something like that?
Briefly, I thought about it.
You gave up.
I probably should, but it's on the list.
Okay.
Yeah,
I actually recently started. I love teaching. I absolutely love teaching. You know, mostly master classes, sometimes private, and which I did not have that much time, you know, before. But now I kind of do it more since I have more time, and I do it through Patreon and I actually just started filming like a series of lessons that I want to, I as opposite from you, like I want to do a structure thing. I want to have like, you know, something that will last, you know, I don't know, 6 months or a year. You know, I have like a bunch of different courses and stuff like that.
Well, you know, it'd be really cool to do a lesson book or a DVD, but that actually is, I mean, where you learn how to, you know, like kind of a classic training book where imagine learning slap where you learn, like say all the single slaps, then the slap where you slap back and the country stuff. And then it's a lesson where maybe just it teaches you how to do finger positioning in all different positions, like a major scale going all the way up and going into the thumb position. But where you're forced to slap and then mix up all these different types of slaps, which, you know, which would help you kind of create your own style and, you know, be a real badass.
Absolutely. I would also recommend for students to practice on open strings all these different slap-based patterns, because that way they can isolate as one problem, so they don't have to think about left hands, or they just think about right hand practicing on open strings.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, because I mean, with me, like when I told you about that time after the Mighty Blue Kings, and I just sat when I was renovating this house, and I would sometimes pick up the bass and face a corner, I would really think about how I was getting my sound, you know what I mean, my right hand, and how I was slapping it. You know, somebody once told me that, you know, if you look at something, emotion dictates sound. And so I was looking at myself, I'm like, I look kind of stiff, you know, when I do certain things. And so it kind of forced me to learn how to be a little bit more fluid. And in turn, it helped me to get a better sound too. You know what I mean? And then I also experimented on which way am I, when I'm doing the single slap, which way am I pulling that string? How is that string hitting against the fingerboard? How is it vibrating? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you see, Carolyn D, you're mentioning being stiff, and she said, Jimmy's hand is so loose and easy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, I think that that actually is part of me learning how to relax. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that does help me to find my sound.
And Hugh Moore mentioned this is really great. Jimmy is a big inspiration.
Hi, Huey.
Yeah. And Lakshmi, he asked for slap etudes. We'll do that. You have another question. Are those olive strings on Jimmy's bass?
Yeah, the E and the A are Parastro olives, and the D and G are just they're just raw gut. It depends on what's on sale. But I like I like having the olive the Parastro olives. They're flat wound wrapped gut strings. I like them because I can slap them, but then also I can play pizzicato and they sustain longer for, this has to do with the genre of music I play. I mean, say if I was playing in a really hardcore, hillbilly band, maybe I might prefer to do, all gut, but.
That's I'm a steel player, but I do enjoy sometimes play guts, especially if I'm playing New Orleans jazz type of thing. It's gonna be, yeah, this sounds cool. This sounds right. I want to sound like Pops Foster.
Yeah, as you know, it's always about the song, the band,
Absolutely.
the genre. I mean, you make the metal string sound great, so that's that's your sound, and I'm sure it sounds
Yes. And then for
awesome
me,
with Tigger Army.
projects a little bit better for me, like on a like through an amp, and like especially like bigger stages. I definitely prefer steel, and I play a lot with the bow as well. So I don't know. It's kind of like my thing. But I'm really glad you're mentioning that. You're choosing what you're going to be playing because what fits the best to the song, and that's the only priority. We can talk about all these crazy slaps and whatever we're doing, but if the only question is does it work for the song or it doesn't work for the song, so, and then you're making everything that you do working for all these songs perfectly. So
Absolutely. I mean, if a song calls for electric bass, I'm going to play electric bass too. I mean, I know it's not slap, but
yeah.
But
you
I
don't
tell you,
slap on electric, right?
What's that?
Do you slap on electric?
No.
Ding, ding, ding.
No, I haven't done that, not yet. But but the thing is that sometimes people say, how come like when I'm playing live shows, how come you don't play slap bass or acoustic on that song? I'm like, the song doesn't call for it. It's it's electric bass is the best choice for me. Though I tell you, it also helps me, and probably helps other people's listeners. You cleanse the palate, so then all of a sudden you're playing slap bass again. And it makes it that much more special. At least this is for me.
I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. And since we're talking about that, playing with different people, different songs, what did your band leaders think about slap? Were they ever telling you, hey, can you just stop that clicky thing, or were they just sound like, oh, you just play slap or don't play anything else?
I don't think I ever had anybody tell me not to play slap. I think it was more me worrying about if I slapped here, are they gonna is that gonna bother them? But no. But then again, me thinking that way kind of made me, or me asking that question made me kind of reserved and find the right spots to slap, because I really enjoy playing pizzicato with adding slap in there. There's a lot of songs that I play with the JD McPherson band where I'm just playing pizzicato and then I'll start to dig in and slap it. And for some reason when I was younger, you had I thought, well, it had to be one or the other. I don't know why I thought that way, but I like mixing it up.
When you mix it up, it really brings dynamics into the music, and JD's music, it's a lot about dynamics, so, and about your playing, which I really appreciate.
Thanks.
And
thanks.
And one question that always kind of bothers me, not bothers me, but that I think often about it, what do you think that slap bass is not more present in nowadays jazz and blues music? Because really, like all of us that came from rockabilly and got introduced to different styles, were into it, and then we, discovered over time Willie Dixon or Hurtado de Haydux or whoever, and then we explored. But people that are in blues, strictly in blues, you can hardly find, maybe like one or two guys that are into slap, but they're like real blues guys, and guys that are not into rockabilly. So, and then jazz. I mean, after Jimmy Blanton joined Duke Ellington's band, it kind of slap bass almost became a bad word in jazz.
Yeah, I know.
So it's just like, how's that?
I think it's more of a kind of a old timey stigma that comes along with it, but maybe not for guys like you and I. But you have to think about your audience. You know what I mean? I mean, it really, it's all relative in what context it's in. As far as, something that might sound really hip and cool to me might be really kind of passe and old timey to somebody younger than me.
Yeah.
So, but why you don't hear more of it? It's the same question. I think it's just a phenomenal sound, especially in blues. But I will tell you that I was once playing a show. I used to play at Buddy Guy's Legends a lot, a blues club in Chicago, and I was playing one night. I don't know if I was playing with this band, the Cashbox Kings, or Joel Patterson or somebody, but I was really being experimental and creating a lot of space, and I was just in a good headspace for playing this way. And I remember afterwards, I got up the stage in Mud Morganfield, Muddy Waters' son, came up to me, goes, "Man, I dig your style," and we talked a lot, and we kind of hit it off, and he wanted to hire me for some gigs, and I was like, "Great, that would be a lot of fun, man," especially since I'm a big Willie Dixon fan. And so we did some gigs, and beforehand, or we booked the gigs, and before we took off, he gave me a call. He says, "Man, we don't have room to bring that acoustic bass. Can you just bring an electric bass?"
Oh.
And I was like, my style isn't, real prevalent on electric bass. And so, unfortunately, I did those gigs on electric bass, and it just wasn't that special. But I was so looking forward to playing some Mud Morganfield gigs on acoustic bass. But I think, and that kind of reminded me of kind of an old school thing where it's just like, oh man, when the electric bass came along, when it was invented and, Fender started, manufacturing these electric basses, it changed everything. All of a sudden you can hear the bass out in the audience, and it was much easier to take around. You didn't have to have this big acoustic bass, to travel with it, back then. And
I can definitely see that factor in rock and roll music, but for jazz, it was like, those guys like stick to upright basses, through the whole time, and they like deleted, the whole slap history. You read jazz books, and they always talk about Jimmy Blanton starting almost like being a first jazz bass player. They even don't hardly ever mention Milt Hinton in that era in the 30s, stuff that he played with Cap Calloway, and plucking the bass. I mean, plucking the bass from 1939, it's just a peak of slap bass, and it's amazing. He never got enough credit for that.
Yeah. I mean, Pops Foster ended every song with slapping the bass. You know what I mean? You talk about real early jazz, and the thing is that I think once again that goes back to kind of this old timey feel. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people want to bring jazz forward, but I do believe, now that you mention it, there's going to be somebody who does start to slap the bass. I mean, you probably already know who they are, especially with the work and all the bass players, that's going to bring slap bass into kind of a contemporary jazz, arena.
Absolutely. Let me see. Okay. Are there any major wrist or finger stretches you guys swear by before or after a gig? That's a question from Ben Wardo.
Boy, it just makes me feel fortunate that I haven't had any injuries that some of our peers have had.
Yeah.
Do I do any? No, I really should. Once in a while, I will stretch my forearm, and that's where you just kind of, do the thing where, you put your arms out, your chest out, and then you angle your hand backwards, and then go forward too, and you could feel it just stretching your forearm. That feels great, and I do find myself doing that kind of involuntarily. That's a great way to stretch.
You do that before the gig, or?
Yes, I mean, I just sometimes will do it without even knowing I'm doing it. It's not like a conscious stretch I do, but a drummer taught me that one. And but yeah, but then again, this goes back to I've spent a lifetime trying to learn how to relax. You know what I mean? I definitely probably have to do a lot more stretches if I played like I did when I was younger.
Oh, okay.
Where everything was just, it was really just, intense, and just you played too hard, and I just played too hard when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I did. It's funny playing with the strings this high. I mean, I played for a couple of years with the strings this high off the fingerboard, and I have these bumps right at the bottom of the fingers that they'll swell up too once in a while if I injure them. But they actually hurt. You can see them kind of rolling in there. They're like these little peanuts, bone scars. So don't play hard.
Yep. Well,
you know how to relax.
You seem like the most relaxed guy now, so you're the guy to listen to.
Well, I tell you, and going off of that, another thing that, and this probably has a lot to do with the days of me playing with the Four Charms and the Mighty Blue Kings, but and it really was the Four Charms, because we really would go down to where you can just hear a pin drop, and it really hold on, get rid of that window. It also forced me to think about, which really helped me in my playing, because if you're just playing hard the whole time, you have nowhere to go. Here's the loudest you can play and here's the softest. If you find a nice pocket somewhere in here, you're playing more dynamic. You can play loud and play soft. So that was also another big deal. So I'm glad that you talked about this and asked that question, because it's always trying to find a pocket. But that being said, it's also trying to find a pocket as a band too. Like say when you play with a drummer, for me to play with a drummer that's playing with big heavy sticks and heavy cymbals and just really pounding it, you know what I mean, like a modern rock drummer, which is great in the right context, which is a lot of things these days, but it's not fun to play with or not fun to slap bass with, because you just feel like you're fighting the whole time. So when I one of my, two of my favorite drummers to play with are Jason Smay and then also Alex Hall. When we did the Sign Signifiers record, it was very special for me because, I had to think about what musicians am I going to put together for this record? I was producing this for JD. And, as far as drummers, it was a no-brainer. I was going to have Alex Hall. Alex Hall learned how to be dynamic from one, being a jazz-trained musician, but also playing in coffee houses where people were sitting right next to him. He's like, how can I be dynamic and quiet at the same time? So he's really playing with his wrists.
I love
you know what I mean? But, and it's funny, people, if you look at the Northside Gal video, JD McPherson Northside Gal video, that's actually how he looks when he plays. He's not toning it down for the video. He's just really kind of playing that low. And so that's a real pleasure to slap with. To play with, because it creates so much space. There's so much room for peaks and valleys, and to kind of create this jump, this feel. So, I mean, I love listening to old music, and putting headphones on and really listening into the room. A lot of times these guys weren't. I mean, they can get loud, but they had a pocket, and they would be very dynamic you can be dynamic with a whisper. You can be very intense with a whisper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to yell at somebody. You can be very intense. So, Alex, and guys like Bobby Trimble too. I mean, he was the first drummer I heard do a shuffle by himself where I was like, oh my God, that sounds incredible. But it's playing with, lighter sticks, thinner drum heads, and lighter cymbals that had a lot of texture. It was more about textures, you know what I mean? And so that was a big influence on my slap playing. You know what I mean? It was who I played with and what was the context.
I bet.
What was the environment I was in? You know what I mean? I always thought, well, if you can play to your environment, if you sound good in the room as a band or just a rhythm section, you're gonna be a lot easier to record. Say if you're trying to record something that sounds more kind of pure and old school. I mean, like I said, there's no rules. I'm just talking about how I achieved, certain rhythms, like say in Signs and Signifiers, that album.
It's like when you talk about dynamics and four charms, I mean, all four of you had that thing down. I mean, Joel is amazing with dynamics. He's really able to play quiet and interesting. And occasionally I watch his, I think he's doing a show like every day or something, right? On Facebook.
Now, I can't keep up, man. he maybe is. I know he does a lot of postings, and
maybe it's once a week or something. But I noticed that I see him fairly often, and he has Stucky commenting on the side, so it's a cool thing. It's weird, like how these times like brought all of us to think about something that we would not do in a regular situation.
Well, it's kind of the silver lining. A lot of people are paying more attention to, kind of producing themselves and putting themselves out there online, which is, helping them to create a larger fan base, which is a great thing. You know what I mean? When you go on tour, you can only play for the people that are coming out to that venue.
Yes.
And that is a blessing about the internet. I mean, the internet is how we as the JD McPherson band got discovered. I mean, this is how,
because of the video.
Yeah. Through that video. The video was definitely something strategic that we put out, with the release of the album, which was October 18th, 2010. And we didn't, and that was on High Style. See, we didn't actually really get the album out there to the whole world, and where you started to hear it in in grocery stores and Target and places like that. It was out on High Style for a year and a half, and so when we released it on Rounder, we were touring that record. So we played those same songs for about, 2.5, 3 years. It was really, we were really happy to put out a second album, have some new material.
Oh yeah, I bet. Which sounds much different than the first one. And I mean, I love that first record. I mean, and everybody do. I mean, everything is kind of perfect, production and songs, and I mean,
thanks, man. Yeah, that was one of the greatest recording experiences I ever had. It was the first time I was able to produce a record without my hands tied behind my back. Where I felt like I can really call the shots. Of course, I produced it, with the artist JD. We brought him up from Oklahoma, and I just put together a bunch of my musicians I've met through the years. And I mean, the core of it is just JD, me, and Alex, and then we added Jonathan Doyle on saxophone and Scott Ligon, who I played with in a bunch of projects in Chicago, but he normally plays with NRBQ these days. And he also has a great band called the Flat Five. If you want to check out something cool and new, no slap-based stuff, but it's great vocals and great tunes, it's called the Flat Five. Give them a plug. Yeah. And these guys were all guys who play all kinds of different styles, but they're also very hip and really good listeners to like old style, like old rock and roll and old, rhythms and, things like that. So,
and I'll tell you something about that first record. How out of the world, I mean, like out of this space, like sounded to me when I heard it for the first time. I haven't even recognized JD, and I knew him before that. He opened with, what is the name of the band? Starkweather Boys or something?
Yeah. That's his earlier band, the Starkweather Boys. He was still a school teacher at that time.
Yes.
Yeah,
I was touring with Deke a lot. Maybe it was even with Jason on drums. I forgot who was on drums, or Lisa Pankratz, one of the two of them. And we played through Oklahoma, and then a couple times JD would open, and then we would hang out, and we hung out like in Green Bay, and then I knew the guy, but he was, I think, going by Davey or something like that.
Dave.
And Dave,
Just Dave.
Okay, yeah, Dave. Okay, so I remember that's what D stands for, right?
Jonathan David.
Okay, so yeah, so he was going like by Dave, so I knew him like that, and then there's this guy JD McPherson coming out like with that awesome video and song. I'm like, wow, how's it possible that I don't know this guy? This guy's great.
Yeah, I know. I got a lot of that too. Where did you find him? I'm like, well, he actually found me.
Yeah, and you guys created like such an amazing thing that I even didn't recognize the person that I actually knew.
Well, you know, he was following. It's funny because he was actually following in like my bands, and he really liked a band I had with my ex-wife, Gabrielle, the Del Morocco's. He was a big fan, and that's where I played guitar.
I remember you actually opened for Deke at a House of Blues when I played in Chicago. That's when we met.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that in the blues.
12 years ago.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, wow. How about that? Yeah, I remember that night. That was great.
Yeah.
And but so, you know, JD was actually the first. I had spent like 7 years building the studio in my attic in Chicago, and JD was actually like the first record that we recorded there. You know, I recorded another band there, but it was just kind of like almost like troubleshooting some of the problems. And so that I remember it was Dimes for Nickels was the first song we recorded. And it was, we were playing, it was piano live too. Here, hold on one second. Come on in. You'll be fine. I'm going to keep doing this, but you guys should come in. You say, hi, Djordje. Anyway, we were recording Dimes for Nickels, and it was bass, drums. JD was playing the rhythm, guitar, and and he was singing too. That's right, live. And Scott Ligon was on piano. This is right after I got a free piano. Brought up 3 flights up a little wooden staircase up to the attic. And it was the first time right after we got it tuned that we started recording this album. And it was the first time, it was all straight to tape. It was all this old 1/4-inch tape that I had bought at this estate sale. It was all in the plastic in these old boxes. And I had a bunch of equipment that I had restored. And it was the first time where, you know, like usually you record and then you go in and you listen to it. And yeah, it sounds good. You know what I mean? You think, all right, sounds good. Yeah, maybe we can fix some things in post-production or whatever and make it and kind of like dial it up and make it sound more exciting. But this was the first time where I recorded and we said, all right, we got something now. Let's go in and listen to it. And Alex was engineering, so he was on drums. So nobody heard it yet. So we walked into the control room, rewound the tape and played it. And it was just like, wow, it was amazing. It was the greatest experience because I had never heard something so good that we had recorded before right out of the gates. And it's pretty much set the tone for the whole album. I mean, it was just an exciting and fun album to record. And a bunch of the material was actually written that week. I mean, you know, we were like so jazzed. We're like, we gotta finish this album this week. And it was about 7 days of recording. And then I was able to fly JD back for a day and a half of like some overdubs. And then later, we did some strings, and I did a bunch of guitar parts. I actually played some guitar solos on that album. And then it took me a while to design the whole package. So it wasn't till like about a year later that we got the album out. And I knew it was going to be a good, it was going to get received really well. I didn't know it was going to get received that well. I didn't know that it was going to cross over as much as it did into mainstream. And so that was a welcomed and very pleasant surprise, because when I first released the record, I was thinking, how am I going to promote this record? Well, maybe we can do some tours in the summertime when JD's not a school teacher. So when it did take off after October 18th, I was thinking, boy, I hope they fire JD from his teaching job. Which actually happened.
Oh yeah, okay. I thought
Yeah.
that he would.
I think JD was very worried, but in a way he was kind of like really like, all right, this is my shot. You know what I mean? Now somebody pushed me to the end of the diving board. I need to make this happen. And
he's such a great guy. And I love his voice. I love his guitar playing too, and
in songwriting. Great, and he has great vision, and and he's also a really good lyricist, and he's a great guy.
Absolutely. And it seems that you two are on the same page as far as that rhythm and blues approach to our
yeah. We used to, when he actually approached me on MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Yeah, man, I really dig your bands and all your recordings, and I know you got the Big C Jamboree going up. Hey, can you book us that gig? And maybe some other gigs around Chicago." And he had sent me the Stark Weather Boys a link to their music, and I thought, okay, here we go again. I just thought maybe it was going to be some kind of, I didn't know how good it was going to be. You know what I mean? And so when I listened to the Stark Weather Boys, I'm like, wow, this is really awesome. And after they did those gigs up in Chicago, we kept speaking on the phone, and he'd always, kind of hint at, man, I love to record. I'd love to come up to Chicago and record with your band. He meant the Four Charms. And then as we kept talking, we always found ourselves like philosophically on the same page as far as rock and roll, and kind of trying to be honest and not letting our modern influences and where we came from, like kind of, letting those influences in, but still in a good, subtle way. And so it was a real kind of a balancing act. But doing that record, it opened a lot of doors to what we're able to do. You know what I mean? And a lot of it was just up in our heads, our own insecurities. And even when it came to songwriting, like what JD would come up with. So it definitely was an icebreaker. And but we wanted to just create a classic rock and roll record, a black, very black influenced, but rock and roll record. You know what I mean? And we are also influenced by a lot of like rockabilly and artists back in the 50s that were influenced by rhythm blues, like Dale Hawkins and and Elvis and things like that, where they still sounded like they still sounded like who they were, but they were very influenced by blues and blues scales and the gospel that they heard, because they would all go to church on Sundays.
Absolutely. We got a question actually about that, not about the church, but like about JD McPherson, but I believe you answered that. Can you talk a bit about meeting and playing with JD McPherson? So you pretty much answered that. And another question from the same guy, Ross Mitchell, is how much do you currently practice?
Well, I told Djordje before we started this session that, man, I was really scared when he first asked me to do this because I haven't played my acoustic bass and practiced since our Christmas tour in December. It's been that long. Now that might sound kind of weird, but we were recording a record in February at what is it called? Western United Studio in LA. That's where Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, recorded Pet Sounds, along with many other artists. It's a fabulous studio on Sunset Boulevard. But we were recording a record there, but I didn't put down any acoustic bass yet. I might go in and overdub it, but I did all electric bass. So I really haven't touched my acoustic bass in years. It was actually in the band's storage, just because I had a lot going on here. And then COVID hit. And, for musicians, that kind of sent us in this world of like, I mean, it was a real tailspin, like, how to keep our heads above water, how to survive, how to pay the bills, and how to take care of the family. So, Djordje, you asking me to do this show is great because it kind of made me pick up the bass again. And now actually I'm going to start practicing because now it's here and I will keep it in a corner. And usually when it's out, I always grab it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I practice. I just kind of practice 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm glad, Slapstream is working out, at least for you. So hopefully somebody else would be inspired, like to practice at least these licks that we're showing. And which studio did you say that you recorded in Western?
Yeah, Western Electric. We started recording a new JD McPherson band album, and it's what's that?
The second album?
No. This is a new one that we're recording.
Oh, you're talking about something currently. Oh, great.
Yeah, something current. Yeah. This would be a brand new record, and I was doing a lot of electric bass on it. It's definitely very surf inspired.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
But I think I we were talking about me doing some acoustic bass work on it. So that just, we just haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the new album coming out.
How far did you get with that record?
Well, we got a lot recorded, but now it's kind of rethinking, well, what we recorded, is it right? It's, now it's kind of going through kind of a, we're still waiting for JD to get a lot of his guitar stuff down. And so it's kind of going through maybe an experimental stage too, and a rethinking stage. But I think we're supposed to get it out at the beginning of next year.
Oh, nice. Which label? Do you know already? Or?
A New West.
Okay. All right. That's you never released something with them. I haven't heard about it.
Oh yeah, we have. We released Undivided Heart and Soul is New West, and so is the Christmas album. Socks.
Okay.
Which was a real fun album to record because it just kind of went, back to my first love, jump, rhythm and blues. And, the whole band, we just all, that was a great time recording that record. It came really easy. And we recorded in June. So we had to turn up the air conditioner and put a Christmas tree in the studio.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. I wanted you to tell me, do you prefer like being, you're not particularly just a sideman with the JD, but do you prefer like being a bass player, kind of like in the back, or do you prefer being a band leader like what you did with Four Charms?
I like both. It depends. Yeah, they're two sides of a coin. I really enjoy, I do think about doing another project where I front it, and it's still kind of in the sketch stage. But I would like to front a band again and sing.
But similar style, or like Four Charms, or something different?
Probably all influences. I like to get back to some rockabilly and blues influences.
All right. So please let me know when you start it so I can promote it on the bass. And I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
But I love Four Charms. I was the last gig at a Green Bay Festival.
Yeah, that was the last gig, 2007.
2007. Yeah, I was there. I was playing with Lemmy at that festival, and I remember that one of my main goals was to see Four Charms.
Yeah, and that was kind of an after fact. We were still kind of once in a while playing a gig here and there, but we had so many other different projects going on. It was just kind of going its course, and I kind of brought up maybe we should just play our, like an official last gig. And so, just to kind of put to make it official.
And that was before you told me that somebody was moving out. Was Jonathan moving to Austin?
Yeah, maybe that was happening at the time. Jonathan Doyle did move to Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Yes, before that. Yeah, that might have helped put a kibosh on the band too.
At the end, I remember seeing him playing with Ryan Gould a few times in Austin. I would like to ask, since we're talking about you being a sideman, I would like to mention some of the people that you played with, like Ronnie Hawkins and
Ronnie Dawson.
Ronnie Dawson.
Yeah, Ronnie was a big influence, a huge influence on me.
How did you enjoy being a sideman with all these people? And please mention who besides him, who else have you backed up?
Yeah, I will. But I tell you that the who introduced me to Ronnie Dawson was I kind of got hip to that Ronnie Dawson was putting out records again, like new records on No Hit Records. I used to have an apartment close to Wax Trax Records in Chicago. There was two Wax Trax records, and the one in Chicago had a great rockabilly, old rock and roll, surf, rhythm and blues, roots music section. And I had found a brand new, a newly recorded Ronnie Dawson record in there. And, I was already hip to Ronnie Dawson with his early recordings, his classics like Rocking Bones and Action Packed. So anyway, I heard this new record and I just thought it was phenomenal. And I was talking to him. My band, the Moondogs, were opening up for Reverend Horton Heat at Lounge X. And afterwards, Jim Heath and I were talking. He says, man, Ronnie Dawson is the coolest, because he's from Dallas too. So they know each other. And he says, man, Ronnie Dawson, I mean, he's a real badass, man. He'll kick both our asses. And and he says, you know what, man, I got to introduce you to Ronnie Dawson, man. You two need to play together. And so he did. He hooked us up. And long story short, before I knew it, I picked up Ronnie Dawson at the airport, at O'Hare Airport, and drove him back. And we played a couple shows in Chicago with the Moondogs backing him up. And we stayed tight ever since. And he actually was the first person to bring me over to Europe. He convinced Barney Kumis of No Hit Records to let him bring over his own bass player. And so that was me. And it was for the No Hit Tour. And on the No Hit Tour, and this was in 1993, it was Big Sandy and the Fly Right Boys, or Fly Right Trio. And it was also the Planet Rockers. And so I played bass as a Planet Rocker. And then Ronnie Dawson. And so that was 1993 was when I was really exposed to the, put out there in the whole European club touring scene.
And that was before Kevin Smith started playing with Ronnie, right?
No, I think Kevin, they had already played. Yeah, they had already played gigs with Ronnie.
Oh, okay.
But it was before that. It was before they went on tours. You know what I mean? And really kind of put it out there. It was, yeah, it was early. It might have been so I might have been 91 or 92 when I started playing with Ronnie.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, and I remember during that tour we recorded Monkey Beat, and so
full length.
What's that?
Full length album.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other bass players on there, but I played a lot because Wally Hersom also plays bass on there too. Big Sandy band backing up on some tunes. But I play on a handful of tunes, a lot of them on Monkey Beat, and that was recorded at Toe Rag, and that was the first Toe Rag location. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's Liam Watson. He's a real great engineer, and they just got a great sound, and so that was a really awesome experience. And and since then, I did a lot of playing with Deke Dickerson and touring and recording. I was on Coco Taylor's last record before she passed. Recorded with Willie Big Eye Smith in Chicago. He used to be Willie. What's his Muddy Waters drummer in the late '60s and the '70s. And who else? Oh God! I mean, even what's that?
Billy Lee Riley.
Billy Lee Riley with Four Charms backed up a lot of artists. We did Billy Lee Riley, the Cleft Tones. Oh geez, boy! When you play these what's that?
With Sleepy LaBeef, were you playing with Four Charms or?
Sleepy LaBeef actually was the Moondogs.
Oh wow! Okay.
That was really early on. Playing with Sleepy was great because he would just go from one song to the next, and you just had to find the key. Which Moondogs was a good band, so it wasn't a problem for us. But that was great.
Are there any recordings from Moondogs?
There is a 7-song EP called "Knocked Out Beat." It's probably really hard to find. And then there's also a 45 that was put out. It has what are the songs? Lowrider and Lane Railroad Track. That might be really hard to find too. I know those two songs were re-released on a CD on No Hit record called Stateside Rockabilly. And then other than that, let's see. I played with, Four Charms. We backed up a lot of doo-wop and vocal groups, especially when you play these festivals like Viva Las Vegas or the Oneida festivals. The Rockin' 50s Fest that happened.
Those Oneida festivals were special. Those were amazing.
Yeah, and so in the Four Charms are really good at backing up a lot of the doo-wop bands, especially like when we got into playing songs like "I Only Have Eyes for You," which the Flamingos made famous. So stuff that had which was a little more intricate. Let's see. Yeah, and other than that, I used to play a bunch with Jake Labatz too. Who's on High Style record early on. I did a bunch of shows in Chicago with Jake, and I don't know if the audience is hip to Jake Labatz, but we just put out a second album on High Style, and Jake Labatz is pretty awesome. If you want to hear more slap bass, you got to hear the first album, but the second album has a lot of acoustic bass too. And then let's see what else. Oh, Pokey with Farge.
So with Jake, you started playing a long time ago? I thought that was kind of like a recent thing.
No, actually, Jake and I have been friends. We met like back in 90 or 91.
Oh, okay.
And he used to play, maybe say with a harmonica player or just by himself, playing country blues. But and he learned a lot of his craft from guys like Honey Boy Edwards or Maxwell Street Jimmy Davis, and these were some of the original, very old school,
nice
original blues guys. I mean, like Honey Boy Edwards was with Robert Palmer when he died.
Oh, wow.
Which actually I did do some gigs with Honey Boy Edwards too, and those were fun because he had some what we like to call serious country time, like when he would change, it was very unorthodox. I
had that experience when I played with Del Hawkins in New Orleans. It was just like you have to listen when he's gonna go. It's got like a hillbilly time.
Dale Hawkins.
Yes.
Dale Hawkins is great to play. I backed him up too once with Deke.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I was really jazzed because at this festival, all also at this festival was James Burton, guitar player. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And who was the, when he was a teenager, he's the original guitar player on Suzy Q.
Yes.
And so
So,
also,
James Burton played guitar like with you and Dale?
yeah, and Dale, and then on drums was DJ Fontana.
Awesome. Okay.
And one thing I love about like Sun recordings and stuff is, sometimes they do a roll and they come out backwards, or just the kind of the
Yes.
the mistakes that are awesome. They're great. I mean, I love mistakes like that. And I remember we're playing, I can't remember what song it was, but we're playing and DJ Fontana does a roll and he almost comes out backwards. And he didn't, but then I thought, oh dear God. Please have him do another roll where he comes out backwards. And awesome. Sure enough, he does this roll, and he's playing down. He comes out backwards, and I remember looking at him, and he didn't want to look at any of us. He just stares up in the air because he says, "I'm going to get it back," and he does. But before that happens, I look over at James Burton, and James Burton looks back at him, and then he looks at me, and he rolls his eyes. And I'm like, oh, thank you, God, this is great. But it sounded perfect. I'm sorry that James Burton or DJ Fontana was put on the spot. I didn't, we don't want to be cruel to him, but it just sounded amazing. That I mean, it was incredible.
I played once with DJ, but Sonny Burgess was singing, and that was a cool experience. Yeah. And I remember that DJ had like some charts like for songs, that he played like for 50 years or something. And so I wanted to ask you, was that a festival like Ponderosa Stomp that you played?
That was the Ponderosa Stomp. That's when it was at the bowling alley.
Oh, okay. So that's got to be like a year or two before I played with exact same people, also at the Ponderosa Stomp Festival.
Yeah, that was Dale Hawkins' territory. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I played once in Memphis when it was at the Gibson factory because of the hurricane. And then next year I played, I think it was House of Blues in New Orleans, but it was New Orleans.
Did you ever back up Joe Clay?
Yes, quite a few times actually.
Yeah.
That's one of my best experiences as far as rockabilly people from the 50s.
Absolutely. I love Joe Clay. And what's so great about his about Joe Clay and Dale Hawkins, I love rockabilly when it's really influenced by blues. You know what I mean? It's real like earthy and so Joe Clay, yeah, he's way up there on my list.
For me as well. Like he got to be my favorite that I played with. That it's from the 50s, and as far as rockabilly people go, that was
yeah. And Billy Lee Riley, I really enjoyed playing with him. Thinking about influenced by blues. I mean, we played a lot of blues tunes when I backed him up, and that was with the Four Charms.
Oh, cool!
In Chicago and up in Milwaukee.
I never even seen him play, but yeah, well, that's really cool. It's like there's something special about like playing with those blues guys. I mean, from those days, I played. I believe it was the same festival with the Billy Boy Arnold and Jody Williams.
Dude, Billy Boy Arnold. What a I'm sorry to interrupt you, but man, you get me excited just mentioning the word Billy Boy, the name Billy Boy Arnold. I mean, his early recordings are just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And it's just a sense of melody and just the rhythm, and I mean, talk about Ronnie Dawson and Rockinitis. You know what I mean? That's the Billy Boy Arnold song. I remember backing him up at the Ponderosa Stomp, and that was just so much fun, just because it was really stripped down, and talk about like having a great time playing slap bass. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we really like dug in. Really dug in. I wish there was some footage from that. I would love to see footage. It's kind of right on the cusp before everybody had, a video camera in their hand.
When I played with them, it was, I think, 2006. I'm pretty sure it was 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there were like people with cameras, but I haven't seen any footage occasionally I still like Google and find like, oh, Dale Hawkins, from the Rosa Stomp, and then nothing. Okay, so
Right.
I wish I even didn't take any photos. Like, I wish I did. No,
Right.
bummed. I would like to ask you about your production. You produced like quite a few records. So besides JD, you worked with Pokey Lafarge, Jake. Is that kind of what you prefer doing, or bass playing, or it's kind of just like flip side, like whatever? What is your way of thinking? How much do you like to be in control in producing these records?
Well, I mean, yeah, control. That's a scary word, because it's almost like nurturing, and trying to get the best out of people. But yeah, no, I think that's what you meant. But I think it just kind of it kind of came out of just maybe a sense of frustration with some of my own recordings early on, and not being able to get the results I wanted. But then also, I really loved kind of wrapping my head and studying rhythms. And I really, when I listen to music, I really like to listen to rhythms. And a lot of times I can't help it. When I hear a band, I can't help to think like, oh, I would love to produce them. And I like to, kind of, it's almost like a Django game. You might want to pull this out, but that influences this block up here. So how can you still like change things, yet still keep it healthy and get good results out of an artist or a band? Bands are harder to produce than just an artist, because an artist, you can hire all the musicians that you want. But bands are fun. You just have to kind of think about it differently. Are fun to produce. But I don't know. I think it's always just something that I kind of enjoyed doing. But I also kind of did it out of necessity of starting a label. But then also through that label, I was hired as a producer to produce other albums that weren't going to come out on my label. So it just kind of happened organically. I mean, I don't do a whole lot of producing, but I do enough to balance things out with me going on the road, and and now with COVID, I'm starting to do some more artwork. But as far as producing goes, I think the recording, kind of producing with the Four Charms was great. And then the Mighty Blue Kings, we actually, for the Mighty Blue Kings first record, Meet Me in Uptown, we flew out Wally Hersom, just because I love what Wally was doing with Big Sandy. And so Wally Hersom was great to kind of like hold our hand and and kind of steer us in the right direction for that album. He did a great job. And then with with, I think it was the Del Morocco's, I kind of produced that record. But still, I was it's almost kind of like it's obviously a learning curve. And so when I built this high style studio up in my attic, really, I think the Signs Signifiers record with JD was the first album that I was able to produce without my hands tied behind my back, where I was able to call all the shots, within working with JD as the artist. And that kind of led on to me producing the Belfieries third album, which is out on High Style Records. You can find that at the highstylerecords.com. And that was really fun because, they're just an incredible band, and Joey Simeone's an incredible singer and songwriter.
It's very unique.
Yeah.
I love
that. And so, there was just like this treasure trove of great stuff to work with them. A lot of it was just kind of really solidifying and working on these rhythms, and also thinking about what record, what record should we be putting out right now to kind of build off of the Roots community that they had already acquired, the fan base, but then also to try to break into some, new fans. So that was something that we took in consideration. But then also it was just helping them edit all the good ideas. A lot of great ideas ended up on the floor, not because they weren't great ideas, it's that there was too many good ideas. I mean,
That's a good problem to have.
yeah. And then I was also hired by Pokey Lafarge to produce Something in the Water. And that was really fun. And it was really fun to challenge him as far as kind of incorporating some new sounds and new instruments, juxtaposed with kind of, the old timey, like a string band genre that he kind of was coming from. So that was, I really loved that experience in that band. And also just, we worked a lot on his vocals. He's got a great sound. He's just the sound of his voice is really cool. It's just helping him.
Yeah, he has a cool thing going on. And the record that you did, is that the one that he released on Third Man Records, or like it was on High Style?
No, actually, that one's on Rounder Records.
Oh, on Rounder. Okay.
Yeah, that's on Rounder Records. And then I just played bass with them not too long ago.
You did a whole album with Pokey?
Yeah, well, I just recorded bass on his latest album, which came out in the spring. Unfortunately, right when this whole COVID thing, was happening or still happening. But that's a great album. It's called Rock Bottom Rhapsody. Check it out.
I believe I've seen one video from him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Carolyn, it says like Something in the Water is an awesome album.
Thank you, Carolyn. Really appreciate that.
Album.
Oh, and another album that I had a great time producing too was Daddy Longlegs on Yup Rock label. Daddy Longlegs is a trio, no bass player, sorry, but it's a trio out of they're based out of Brooklyn, New York. And they're great. And we produced that and recorded that at a High Style Studio in Chicago. And so that was a lot of fun.
It's also called High Style Studio.
Well, it's kind of it's High Style, but it's also Alex Hall running the business now, which he'll go under Reliable Records. So it's Reliable Records at High Style Studio.
Okay, so if you are involved and it's High Style, and if only Alex, then it's Reliable.
Well, yeah, but a lot of times you'll see on records it might say Alex Hall for Reliable Records at High Style Studio.
Ah, okay.
It's morphed.
so the studio still functions.
Yes, and
okay.
If you send an email, he's the one that's going to read the email. You know what I mean? Well, I just go there and do my projects here and there, and go say hello to a lot of my old equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's taken the studio. He's really done a great job with that studio. He's brought in a bunch of new equipment, and yeah, he's a phenomenal. Besides being a phenomenal drummer and piano player and accordion player and vibe player, he's also a wonderful engineer.
He truly is. Like I mean, I'm amazed about that guy, and always make sure that I see him play when I'm in Chicago.
Yeah, check him out he also plays with the Flat Five, and that's the guys I was telling you about. They're really cool.
Oh, okay. And he played in Twin Peaks as well, right? With
yeah. I think he's a part of the Twin Peaks band.
Yeah.
With the Cactus Blossoms.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
that's cool. Do you mind, like, I mean, we've been like almost 3 hours. Great. It's like so many things. There's like a few things that I want to ask you. So,
holy smokes! Wow,
right now,
I thought it was like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, I would like to ask the audience now, like, if you have any questions, we're going to be wrapping up soon. So now's the time to ask Jimmy. And I would like to ask, do you mind like playing a little bit more?
No, I don't mind playing more.
Yeah, I would love, I love your playing. So I want to hear you play slap as much as possible. All right, while Jimmy is preparing, like, thanks to all of you, for watching this. We're going to be wrapping up. soon. Please ask any questions. And I'm not sure if you're subscribed or not. If you're not subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like button. So that really helps out. And I believe that Jimmy is ready. So let's do this.
Oh, gotta bring that down a little bit. All right. You know, I thought of, let's play around with this a little bit. You know, when you do a sound check every day when you're on the road for a long time, sometimes you tend to gravitate towards the same thing. And here's a little something I played during sound checks. And basically, it's based off of mellow saxophone. That mellow saxophone by Roy Montrell on Specialty. But I'll slap it.
That's killer. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. That's the song that Stray Cats covered, right? As Wild Saxophone, right?
Yeah, you're right. As a wild saxophone.
Exactly.
But if you haven't heard the original, check it out, man. The original, I believe that's with Earl Palmer on drums.
Uh-huh.
And it's just the coolest rhythm ever, man. It's just a great song. That Mellow Saxophone by Roy Montrell.
Yes. Brian also covered it with his orchestra later on.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else like to play?
I
want like a solo Jimmy Sutton show now.
Yeah, I don't. It's so funny. I can't think of anything else to play. But let's see. Woo!
Man,
Yeah, that was all right. I said that was okay.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, man. I wish I had an atomic boogie worked out.
You remember that one?
Yeah, the atomic boogie. I think you're.
That was so weird. Like in that time, the guy from Rockabilly Bass, Sean, he asked me, "Hey, I would like to interview you, but nobody ever heard about you. Do you mind like posting some video?" I was like, "Okay, I can figure out something." And I asked a friend of mine like to film me, and he told, I'm like, "All right, here's the video." And he's like, "No, just upload it. There's this new website called YouTube, so you can upload it there." And I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'll figure it out." And it was just when YouTube started. It was so weird. So
yeah, I know. YouTube was it's pretty amazing. You know what I mean? It's a blessing. Yeah. It's a blessing, and sometimes can be a curse.
Oh, absolutely. Everything is on there. All right, we have like quite a few questions that just came up, so we're gonna try to go through them fast. Okay. So you mentioned that High Style Enterprise started with the fanzine and then morphed into a label and the studio, right?
Yeah, the fanzine was called Screamin'.
Ah, the Screaming fanzine. Ah, okay. But it was under High Style.
It was under an umbrella company, the mothership. The company is called High Style Enterprises Inc.
Ah, okay, got it. Now we
And
know.
so High Style Records is a DBA, doing business as, under High Style Enterprises.
Got it. What would be your advice? This is an interesting one, and I guess important for our viewers, because there's not that many major or mainstream gigs that require slap bass and upright bass for that matter. Like, so what would be your advice? Like, how should people that are interested to tour, to get, to play with bigger artists, what would be your advice, like how to get the gig?
That's really a great question. Well, yeah, I think it's really about putting yourself out there and just having these artists, see you. I mean, I think that being in a city like, say, even Austin or LA or Chicago, but I mean, there's I mean, if you think about something like Austin, Texas, how many like bigger artists base themselves out of there just to be in that city and to play around. These bigger artists are always scoping out players, and they're asking about people who are good. So I mean, look at somebody like Billy Horton. He plays with Jimmy Vaughn. By the way, Billy Horton is one of my favorite bass players too. A lot of times I don't hear his name mentioned very much, but I think he's a phenomenal upright bass player and slapper. But I think it's really just putting yourself out there and just, bigger artists are watching, they are looking, you know what I mean? And then also just being, sometimes I think just being fun to hang out with can get you the gig too.
Absolutely.
Don't be a pain.
Yes, exactly. You don't want to go on tour with somebody that's a pain.
Well, it's funny, like, you always hear that sometimes somebody will actually hire somebody, not because they're the best musician, but they're the funnest to be around.
Yes, absolutely. But it helps being a good musician.
Absolutely. Geez.
Since you mentioned Billy Horton, I would like you to talk a little bit about like what are the nowadays slap bass players that you appreciate and like. And I absolutely agree about Billy Horton. I love his playing on Horton Brothers and on Hot Club of Cowtown. I think he's
that's where I first heard him play, and he was really young when I first heard him. I don't even think he was 21 yet.
Oh, really? Wow.
But yeah, and I think I was, who was I with? I think maybe was I doing a tour with? It's so funny. For some reason, Wayne Hancock is coming to mind. I did one tour and then a few shows with Wayne Hancock. It wasn't very much, but what were we playing with them? But anyway, I heard him with Hot Club of Cowtown, and I was just like, whoa, my goodness, who is this kid? And he just had great sound and control and rhythm and tempo. I just was thoroughly impressed on how cool he was, and he just sounded amazing.
Yes, you could definitely hear the strong Kevin Smith influence, but he had.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yeah. Besides him, like any other nowadays slap bass players that you dig?
Yeah, Bo Sample, I think, is a really phenomenal player. And I really also just appreciate his whole like approach and his touch and his he's a very relaxed player and a real concise.
Super.
And, real tasty. Other than that, Kevin Smith, I think, is phenomenal. I know there's a lot of other guys. Djordje, I don't know if you ever heard of him. I think he's phenomenal. It's almost like trying to think of jokes. I mean, who else? But those are a few that come to mind.
What would be your advice and like for younger bass players and inspiring musicians, like, and common mistakes that you did that you would like to avoid if you started, if you know this, not everything that you know now, and then and you're starting, and besides like playing bass, like with this action.
I heard somebody once say, "Be a smart man, not a wise man." It means learn from other people's mistakes. Don't learn from your own mistakes. But
yeah.
That being said, I would think that don't be afraid of lessons. Just lessons, just to absorb. I mean, I just kind of like look back, and I was so shy, or I had a lot of like things that kept me from like really asking other people and digging in and trying to ask for help to learn how to play. I kind of relied on myself too much. So don't do that. Lessons are great. And also, I think another thing is, when you talk about lessons and a lot of times, slap playing is kind of, people think about it, it kind of rubs elbows with the whole style, you know what I mean? The whole, especially in the rockabilly scene. But I think to practice with a metronome is an amazing thing because it'll really humble you real fast. But if you keep at it, it'll really like teach you a lot and open up your mind to just rhythm, you know what I mean? And tempo. And it'll make you just sound so much better if you really think about, and also make you a lot easier to play with, you know what I mean?
And nowadays, you don't know, if you go in a studio and somebody hires you as a studio musician, often people want to be playing a click track. So maybe not on our scene that much, but in general,
being able to play with the click track actually is a real good skill to have.
Absolutely. How do you like to record your bass?
Well, I've recorded all kinds of different ways, but like say if we're at high style, I really enjoy using the bird cage, the Altec, ribbon mic. What is the number? This is a 639. Oh, I know it has a 6 and a 3 and a 9. But anyway, a ribbon mic, and really it's just kind of having it on the high end F hole, maybe about a foot away from the bass, or inches from the bridge, but having it down there so you have a good mix between when you play pizzicato, the sound, the note, and if you're slapping, you know what I mean? So there's a good balance. But a lot of times I just record with one mic. I don't plug the bass in. It's just one mic.
Oh, nice.
It's really just about mic positioning, and there's so many different mics you can use. There's no like one special mic. I mean, I like the Altec, the old birdcage, because for some reason it just has given me a lot of good results. But I've also heard other amazing results from different mics. It makes me think of the one time when I was doing that recording on the Coco Taylor record. I was doing it where I was overdubbing the bass, and I was in a isolation booth on my own, and the engineer had a Neumann U47. I mean, it's just picking up everything. It sounds beautiful, but I didn't realize that I was breathing so heavy and doing really weird breathing patterns as I was playing bass. So afterwards he says, "Here, come in here. I want you to listen to something." He goes, "That's you." And I'm playing this bass line, and you hear me going,
Did they leave that on the recording?
No, we redid it. But I think about it a lot as I, record these days to, breathe through my nose and, calm myself down and don't do any weird breathing.
Um, as far as we talked about your favorite amp, which is Hardkey, and JK.
Oh, GK, yeah, Gallien Kruger. Yes, you're right.
K that you're also endorsed by. And we have not mentioned your bass. What bass do you play? How many basses do you have?
That's a great question. Let's see. I have a bass up in Chicago at the studio. It's an American standard, and I don't ever tour with that. That's just kind of there if somebody needs a bass at the studio. But I also have my first bass that I bought that, man, I think I want to say that's a 59. It's an M1. It was a blonde bass that when I was 18, I painted black.
Oh, okay.
As you know, when you're 18, you paint everything black. And I actually stripped the black off not too long ago, and I wish I didn't. I wish I would have kept it black. But I have that bass still, and that bass needs some help and some work. But my main bass is this one right here, and I think this is a 63, and it's a C1. And I bought it at Kagan and Gangs, and I think originally it was a bass from like a high school, where it was there for band, because it was with a whole bunch of other basses they got from some high school or some school district. The bass I really wanted at the time was right next to it, and it had all these hearts etched into it with initials. You know what I mean? So like these high school kids are scratching in their love, HS plus, DT, with little hearts, so it was like the love bass. That's the one I wanted to buy, but it didn't sound as good as this bass. This bass it's not a real looker, but what I like about it is that it has a real like punchy sound. The strings definitely have some more tension. They're not that loose, so the note flies off or projects off the bass pretty fast. And that's one thing I really like about it. It's just a very punchy bass, and so it's like it's my old warhorse. And I bought this bass in '95. The funny thing about it is that I bought this bass to play with the Mighty Blue Kings, because the other bass that I had from the Moondog days was that blonde bass I had painted black, and it had like this kind of like this off-white piping on it, like Bill Black. And I thought, I can't have a rockabilly bass to play in a jump blues band.
Oh, wow.
And so the funny thing was that when I bought that first bass was at Kagan and Gaines, and that was like on Music Row in Chicago, where there were all these music stores, and it's the kind of store where you take an elevator up and the elevator door opens and you walk right into the store. And when we auditioned we went through a bunch of saxophone players, but our new saxophone player, which ended up as our permanent saxophone player, was this guy named Jerry DeVivo. We call him Big J DeVivo. And his brother-in-law was the new owner of Kagan and Gaines. His father was the owner when I went there as a 16-year-old. So come full circle, all of a sudden he's like, yeah, my brother-in-law owns Kagan and Gaines. You should go see him. So I went and saw him, and I got this bass for a really good deal, because the brother-in-law was a big fan of the Mighty Blue Kings.
Oh, nice.
The band that we were starting. He really wanted to help out. And so ever since then, I've bought pretty much all my stuff from Kagan and Gaines. And what I like about them is they just have a great a selection of strings, and they ship out to people. So check out Kagan and Gaines. That's Kagan and Gaines in Chicago. Actually, it's in Oak Park or Forest Park, right outside Chicago.
Do you miss Chicago sometimes?
Oh, absolutely.
You're in Nashville now, right?
I'm in Nashville right now, which is a great city. But yo, man, I miss Chicago. Yeah, I'm a Chicago guy.
Paul King asked, like a vintage basses or modern, which you prefer?
I don't have any modern basses, so I guess vintage. I would like to actually. I would love to try out some more modern basses. It's funny. I haven't found. I mean, I haven't tried out that many modern basses, but I really haven't found anything that really sends me over the moon or anything that I can afford. You know what I mean?
Sasha asked, like, what do you think? Who is the most influential slap bassist from the past?
Man. The most probably, I mean, it's got to be Bill Black.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, another guys, the two other guys that come like to my mind would be Milt Hinton and Willie Dixon.
Oh,
But
but that's for I was going rockabilly.
yeah, I think
Rockabilly.
Overall would probably be Bill Black or Milt Hinton. I mean, Milt Hinton's been like pretty influential as well. I mean, it's hard, but like one of those guys. Just a bit more about gear. How old is Jimmy's K C1? Has it?
I think this is a 63.
Okay. Has it any restored new part on it, like a new fingerboard? And do you have any other double bass? You answer that.
I'll tell you a secret about this bass. Here, hold on. Hold on. Let's see. Let me move this over so I can grab the bass. So this bass, the bottom seams, I don't know if you can see this, but they're all chewed up. And that's just because of years in probably a high school through the 60s and 70s, being thrown around. But the other crazy thing about this bass is that whenever you travel playing acoustic bass, slap bass, a lot of times you have to borrow or rent. Once in a while you rent, but pretty much borrow basses or pick them up at a festival or what have you. And that's always been kind of a nightmare experience for me. Because sometimes I'll get a really good bass, but then sometimes I've gotten basses that I just wanted to put a bullet in my head after the show. It's just very hard to play basses. So when we really started touring hard with the JD McPherson band, I just kind of thought, man, I just really wish I can have my own bass, And I even, well, actually, I won't tell you about that, but I will tell you about eventually. I wanted to take this everywhere, and at one point, we were doing a recording in Memphis, and the neck on this thing kind of tilted up. It came unglued, and there's a dovetail under here that holds this all together, but it's still like popped up, where I had to meet my brother in Southern Illinois. He drove down and met the van and trailer, and we switched basses from a bass from Chicago, one of my other basses, and I sent this over to the luthier, and the luthier said, you've always wanted a travel bass, and most of the work would be getting the neck off, and I've got an idea for you on how I can turn your KC1 into a travel bass. So, I've seen videos of people doing this on YouTube, and they cut big holes in the side, and they do all these things. But I think this idea is just genius. Basically, I don't know if you could see this, but there's a nut right here. And that nut goes down and into a basically it's a threaded piece, like a little crown, like these things that have little spikes on it that has a threaded circle. And how we got that in there was just taking the tail piece out and putting this little threaded crown on the end of a long threaded pole and putting it up right through this bass and tapping it in and cutting these holes in here. And so this is the only thing that got cut or drilled into was up here at the what do you, I don't know what you call this piece right here, the elbow, that piece of wood there. And so basically when I travel, I take this neck off and it goes into a fiberglass case. And wherever I go, I just build the bass back up with a little ratchet kit. And I put the strings back on. And I have a way of putting Velcro strips around the strings to hold them all in place, and a bunch of little straps that I kind of MacGyvered. And so basically, it saves me having to fly with a really big case because it's a shorter case. And usually I've been charged to fly it. They put it underneath the plane, and it goes in this case that I kind of wheel. It has 2 wheels on it, or 4 wheels actually. And it cost me everything from I've been charged no money to $200. So if you think about like how much you're going to rent a bass from, from a music store or basically it's this quality control. So wherever we go, we are consistently have the same sound, and we have the same sound guy. And so it's just about consistency.
Absolutely. And what about his amps cab with the Chicago written logo on it? Is it the same 410 hard kit?
Yeah, that speaker cabinet is actually right under me in the basement right now. It's got some blown cones, but yeah, I still have that one.
We don't have basement.
Yeah, but that's actually a Harkey cabinet. The Chicago emblem was something I found on the edge of a truck stop parking lot. It was just sitting there, and I just screwed it on to the front of my speaker cabinet back when in the Moondog days.
Oh, awesome. How did Jimmy learn to relax in his slapping? Something that I struggle with in my playing. Chuck Carter asked.
Let me see if I can answer that. I'm probably going to develop this answer as I figure it out and think about it. But I think, can you see that all right?
Yes.
When I was younger, I played hard, and I really pulled hard. But now it's like, how hard do you need to pull to get that sound? I mean, to me, that sounds great. And I'm not pulling that hard. I'm just pulling just hard enough to get the string to hit the fingerboard. But also, I mean, everybody's different. Everybody has different string heights. The distance from the string to the fingerboard. I wish I was one of those guys that can have it closer, but I don't. My fingers are a little fat, so I can't. I have to have them up. But usually, I have them just where I can just kind of slip. Here, let me. I don't know if you can see this. I can just slip my finger underneath it. It just touches my fingernail. That's about how high it is. So anyway, it's really just about finding the pocket. I guess we can go back to pocket. I'm finding just the pocket on just enough, putting enough energy and motion and muscle into it to get it to just hit the fingerboard. And sometimes you want to dig in more, sure. But if you find a nice pocket, you have somewhere to go. You could even get quieter or you can get louder. So, and also I think when I was rethinking my slap back, like that was right after I left the Mighty Blue Kings in '97, I was also thinking about how I relax and how I stand. It was not putting my elbow out like this and really trying to pull hard and keep up with the band. It was also a time where I practiced like super slow. almost like like a Tai Chi thing. You know, I mean, I would. I don't know if that answers it.
I think absolutely.
But I think practicing slow is really underrated because if you practice, you know, if you get faster and faster and faster, that's great. But you know, how many of us, you know, can play really effectively slow slap bass?
I agree. Some production on JD Records has lo-fi 60s vibe. Sounds like bands like Stereolab Broadcast. Does Jimmy know these bands?
No, I don't know. Stereo. I feel like I've heard that, you know, that band, but no, I'm not familiar with them. I should check them out though.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'll check out Stereolab. Sure.
What do you think about Rick Ramirez?
Oh, that guy. I haven't heard that name in a long time. Talk about a guy who's relaxed when he plays. I think Rick Ramirez was it was such a pleasure to watch him play and listen to him because, I mean, he really was. He had a really great relaxed feel to his playing. Loved it. Thanks for mentioning him. Yeah, he's a great player.
Yeah, especially the stuff that he did with early Wayne Hancock records and 2 Tons of Steel, right? That was his band.
Yeah, I believe so. Yep. But definitely the Wayne stuff is what I'm familiar with, and I saw him play with Wayne. That's the first time I heard him play, and man, yeah, that's great that you mentioned his name.
I saw him play only once, and he was playing in some random band, and he opened when I was playing with Deke in Houston, I believe. It was Continental Club, but not the Austin one. I believe Houston.
Yeah, the Houston one that looks like the one in Austin.
Yeah, okay. What do you think about Fred Maddox?
What do we think of Fred Maddox? He's great. Absolutely. I mean, one of the originals. I mean, talk about, you know, I mean, I think he had an amazing approach. I mean, great, fantastic.
Does your sound pause fall out? I assume
sometimes.
That's on the traveling bass, right?
This sound post now is never falling out on me.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to remember. I used to have another folding bass where the sound post, I had a lot of problems with it. I actually have had. Actually, that's not true. I used to have problems with this sound post falling out back when we first converted this to a travel bass. It was only once in a while, and maybe it happened twice. But anyway, since we've taken care of that, I actually have little pieces of wood in there that kind of hold it in place. It's not glued in place, but it's kind of guided in place. But then also, I don't give it a chance to fall out because when I travel with this bass, I put Velcro around the whole body and kind of create tension over the sound post. Yep.
It makes sense. Hello, Kitty. That was the Karen's comment.
You say hi to everybody.
Hi.
John Bell also mentioned like that he was studying Bill Black, and then he found out that Fred Maddox was his inspiration.
Oh, really? That's cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, I have one more question for you, and I think
you think I gotta go?
Perfect timing. What inspires you to still do what you do?
I'm sorry. Say again.
What inspires you to do to still do what you do? I mean, considering the situation now, everybody's saying like, you know, being a musician is not a real job. That's a hobby, or like, you know, that's you guys are just having fun. This is not serious, you know, blah blah blah, and then all that stuff. So my question is, what inspires you after all these years to do to still do what you do?
Well, that is a real big question. Because, I mean, it really is. It is my livelihood, which, of course, has been completely challenged during this weird COVID-19 pandemic time. But I think what, when we started I mean, obviously, I always did it because it was fun. But it's interesting. Music, I mean, slapping a bass, but playing music, it was always kind of a great outlet. But then all of a sudden your outlet becomes your job. And then it's very challenging. And then you have to really kind of be a professional. And we talk about it a lot. And I always kind of think, well, at least for me, being a professional is being able to go out there and put on a good show and entertain people who've paid to see you perform. And so I like to, of course, we're going to, that's just the way it goes. You're going to entertain them because without an audience, you're really kind of nothing. So I think that, and then when you're challenged and it doesn't, like say, the beauty of being a band, there's like, say in the JD band, there's 5 of us. And when it's really happening, it's almost like pistons firing, in sync. And it's an amazing thing. It's almost like an artist when they're painting, time becomes, everything becomes timeless and they're really in a zone. For us, sometimes that happens with 5 people. And when it doesn't, I think that's when you become the true professional and you just kind of, you still deliver, you still deliver. Maybe sometimes fake it to make it. But then sometimes when you fake it to make it, you end up making it. And, sometimes if you smile, that smile becomes genuine, It might have been fake at first, but then it becomes genuine. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting question. But what inspires me to keep going? I think out of necessity right now. But also, I do want you to know that I love all art. I love, like you said, I love producing. I like working with other people, and I like performing. I even like playing some guitar. But I also like, doing art as a visual artist. Before I started playing music full time, I was a freelance illustrator. And so traditional medium. And so since this COVID thing, I started doing just some more art. I've been doing some portraits for commissions. You can go on my Instagram and see them. And that's kind of been fun. Another way to help supplement, paying the bills. But it's tapping into my left brain art world.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks a lot for doing this, Jimmy. Stoked we made this happen. I know how much effort it is, like especially when you have a small kid. I'm really happy and honored that you were able to find this time. It's over 3 hours, almost 3.5.
Yeah, man, I tell you, it's amazing how fast time goes by. It's been a real pleasure doing this with you, Djordje. I really am honored too. You're a phenomenal bass player, and I really love this show. I love that you're doing this. So everybody, let's put our hands together for Djordje.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. And I hope, next time, as soon as possible, I'm going to see you, in person, kicking ass, slapping bass with JD or, your own new project. And I can't wait to hear the new record next year.
Thanks. And let me know when you're in town, when things start to normalize, we have to get together. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been a real pleasure.
I think that everybody.
I hope it was fun for you all. All right.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Be safe. Be good.
Thank you. All right, that was Jimmy Sutton. It's almost 3.5 hours. I think this is, besides Mark Rubin's, the longest Slapstream episode we ever had. And it seems that you guys are happy, like so many positive comments. Uked in my car, wrote, "This was a great show. Thank you so much. Knowledge, history, and talent. Jimmy is so smooth. He truly is." And thank you, like Waxy's Shack. Djordje, this is valuable service you're providing to the bass community. You have always been a great presenter and promoter of other people's talent. This is the way, oh, great man. Thank you, and I really appreciate that. You know, one of my life goals is to establish slap as a just regular upright bass technique, as bow and pizzicato, and I think the only way to do it is that if we do it together. And I don't want to sound like a hippie, but I think that's creating a community, especially of high quality people like Jimmy Sutton and other guests that I had. I think that is the way to do, and I hope, you know, to continue this as long as I can and as long as you people are interested. And thanks so much for so many great comments. It's just, you know, I can click everywhere and so many. Thank you all. If you'd like to support me, what I'm doing, and these slap streams, please check out these donation links below. I put Venmo and PayPal, and please check out Patreon. Another huge shout out to SCOT OWEN, who signed up for the tier when I give a shout out to a new Patreon. So if you want to hear your name and have the link to your social profile under the video, make sure to check out the Patreon. The link is below. Follow Jimmy. All his links are below the video as well. You can see his amazing art, all the stuff that he does, and the link for his record label. My links are below as well: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of that. And Art of Slap Bass as well. The most important, follow Art of Slap Bass on all your social media. That's the future of slap bass. And do not forget to subscribe. If you haven't clicked that subscribe button, make sure to do that now, and like the video. These two things, including the comments, really help out boosting YouTube algorithm. That I don't want to get too much into it, but I kind of have to in order like for people to see these episodes and these amazing artists. So thank you again, and thanks to Fernando Slap from Argentina, who actually just moved to Spain. So now he's Fernando from Spain, for these amazing graphics that he did. All the stuff that you've seen during the video, it's been made by Fernando. Thank you. His links are below as well. And don't forget, never fret, slide it in smooth and keep it in a groove. I'm Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat, and I'll see you next